Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku had immortal quirk part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story is 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗍 from Wattpad. So let's start the video. Izuku's POV. Before he meets All Might, as I stood over the railing, I got a clear view of the polluted sky being loaded up with smog and busy roads full of screeching cars with angry people. All around me were signs of the pathetic human race. A violent breeze smashed against my eyes, causing them to twitch and fill with tears, obscuring my view of the world around me. "Stop!" I hear an old and desperate voice yell from behind. I rotate my body so that I am facing the building and look towards an old man limping towards me. "Stop!" He yells again, noticing his words reached me. "Don't jump there, you'll hit my car." Can you guess what I do? Well, I reel up my middle finger at this BE and lean backwards with a smug look on my face. Then I fall gracefully, but not too graceful, past the second story quickly, too quick, and hit the car violently, far too violent. I stare up at the sky, allowing the moments to pass until I feel a heavy river of blood pouring out of my broken body. It hurts. To fix the issue, I pop my limbs back in place and watch as they slowly begin fixing themselves, halting the flow of blood. It hurts. I pull out a notebook that I placed between the band of my black joggers, which are now covered in multiple holes and fresh blood. I open my notebook while taking the pen dangling at the side and write, Attempt 136, suicide jump pain rating, for success. Not applicable. I felt a sense of relief when falling, however my back felt like it was torn off when I hit the car. Note to self: if I do this again, go for a higher building where I can enjoy the view, or go for a remote cliff. I peel my back off of the car, removing the broken shards of glass from my body while doing so. It really hurts. I stand on my feet and temporarily support myself using the car until I regain full control of my agitated limbs. I then walk off as if nothing had happened, glancing behind me as I saw the selfish old man crying beside his car. I thought, that's what you get for not giving a. I then make my way home while dreading what's in store for me. The 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗍 household, and here we go again, me walking through the door, me taking my shoes off, me greeting my parents, and then I'm 𝗧. I suddenly get cut off by my mum's loud screeching, "Get out of this house already, you FB." I then do what most would and attempt to sneak off to my room, but what do you know, my dumbass of a father heard me and demands I come over to him. "Izuku, get your butt over here." Well, here I am stood in front of my father as he yells and complains while my mum cowers in a corner. Literally the story of my life. At this point, I really pitied the poor neighbors. I mean, we were in a 3-story apartment block with neighbors all around us listening in, so their ears must be, "Listen when your dad is speaking to you." He slapped me across the face with all his strength, causing me to be flung across the room and slam into the shelves. It hurts. I stumble to the floor when I attempt to get up due to the fuzziness in my head. If he's ever wondered why I'm a mumbling mess, then it's his fault. My father walked up to me and noticed my attempt to get up, so he pinned me to the floor, one of his legs crushing my body while his arms crush my delicate wrists. It hurts. When I finally stop resisting, he reaches for my delicate green curls and steadily stands himself up, dragging me along with him. Due to my twig-like physique and my body type reflecting my strength, I could not resist the strength of the blob-built man, who could be described as being similar to a sumo wrestler. I swung my legs around and punched his hand like a flailing child, yet any attempt of mine was fruitless. He pulled my head up by my hair, causing my roots to cry out in pain as I let out a minor groan, yet he had still done worse to me. "Please just stop." He pulled my head back and then violently bashed it against the solid wall. Through this I remained quiet as I gritted my teeth and swallowed my anger. He then pulled my head back again. "Apologize," my father demanded. My mother runs at him desperately as she demands that he release her son, but he slaps her round the face and she collapsed to the floor as a sobbing mess. My father bashes my head against the wall, but yet again I remain quiet. "Make it stop hurting." He repeats this 3 more times until blood begins to flow down my face. "I'm sorry," I stutter in a monotone voice. He slams my head against the wall again, complaining about how he can't hear me. "I'm sorry." I say again, slightly louder but still monotone. It hurts. Speak with more emotion, you worthless bee. He slams my head again. This time the fresh blood seeps into my open eyes, filling the whites of my eyes and temporarily dyeing them red. I'm sorry. I yell back at him before he slams my head again. But just make it stop. This continues on for at least 7 more times until he becomes bored and releases me and sits on his recliner chair, turning on the TV. At this moment I tumble onto the floor and take a breath of relief before he demands, "Go get me some beer. Please stop." I quickly steady myself to stand up and run towards the door. I know all too well that if I take too long he'll start beating Mum, so I only grab a few wipes, an extra long blue hoodie, some money and my shoes. I stumble out of the door as I try to put my shoes on while walking and shut the door behind me, still in my torn up bloody joggers and with my red eyes. Along the way to the shop that I found sells to underage customers, I wipe my forehead clear of the flowing blood, and due to my quirk my head has already stopped releasing more blood, though it takes a while to heal completely. An injury of this caliber would take around 7 hours. I, of course, do not even try to wipe the blood from my eyes due to obvious reasons and decide to wash it off when I get home. I buy the beer from the sketchy shop and take my usual peaceful shortcut across the local park, until I see the silhouette of a strange hooded man staring up at the sky on a bench in the park center. Due to my own boredom and curiosity, I walk up to the man and sit beside him and ask, "What are you doing?" I stare up at the sky as well, though I of course cannot see a single star because of my blood-soaked vision. "I have no reason to tell you," the guy responded in a rude, cacophonous, raspy tone. "Then why are you here?" I asked. He took a deep sigh and said, "'Cause I can be kid. Now how about you go bother your mummy and daddy at home?" I always hated it when people called me a kid. I mean, I was old enough to understand that life 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗍. I was old enough to know that my existence was pointless, and I was old enough to have experienced death over and over 136 times to be exact, so I responded in the best way I could think of. I took a deep breath and said, "Bold of you to assume I have parents. I mean, I did and I do, but still, what if I hadn't?" We sat in silence for what felt like forever until I broke the invisible sound barrier. "Well, I do, but my father is dead to me and my mum tries but just can't." It was silent again for a while until he told me, "Well, that's nice, kid," in a slightly sarcastic tone. "I'm not a kid, Yano. I've experienced plenty of this miserable thing called life and have a clear understanding of how pointless it." He sighs and tells me, "Well done." He didn't say it sarcastically, but he didn't say it earnestly either. At the very least, he didn't call me a kid, so I'll class that as a win in my book. I look over to him trying to catch a glimpse of his face, but I could only see a silhouette. In this red-colored world of mine. Ending it with that failure, I stand up, tell the man, "See ya," and walk off towards my hell home. What a weird guy, I thought, but at least he distracted me from my depressing life for a second there. A slight smirk spreads across my face, but I quickly dismiss it and continue on home. "Please save me." Shigaraki's POV. Well, that was weird. I had just spoken to a kid about life, I think. And that was just weird. I mean, this young kid, maybe 15, just approached me and was like, "Hey, I hate life, how about you?" Like, who the hell would come up to a total stranger and talk about how shitty life is? Well, clearly that kid would. But still, I thought he did somewhat help me clear my thoughts though. I slightly smirk but quickly wiped that look off of my face and got my phone out. Krusty Blueberry. "Hey Kurogyri, pick me up transport. I am currently talking with 𝗵𝘃𝗃 right now and will be unable to help you, so you will have to walk back. See you later." Krusty Blueberry. "When I get back you will never be able to see again." I put my phone back in my pocket and stared up at the sky, feeling an intense annoyance. "You know what, Kurogyri, I thought just F you." I eventually let go of my stubbornness and got off the bench and trudged off to the bar. "Wait. Which way do I go?" And that was the time I met the strange boy and got lost. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗵𝗃. The next day, what an appealing day it was to be alive. I stumbled out of bedding, tripping in the middle of it. I ripped open my curtain and stared directly into a lovely brick wall view that stood 2 rulers away from my window. I only had damaged school uniforms left that were destroyed by Kaken's constant torment. I went to get breakfast but was hit across the face and told to starve. I was thrown out of my house and I saw Kaken the moment I got into school. Truly an amazing day it was. Please let me die. 𝗂𝗃 demanded that I follow him and his dumbass goonies to the side of school, and me, who hates being burnt, obviously complied. So at that point I walked to the side of the school and stood there as 𝗂𝗃 yelled in my face, and I just stared at the floor, but obviously every action I take is wrong, so I still got bombed by this 𝗬𝗓𝗓𝗏 idiot who was actually surprisingly smart somehow. 𝗬𝗂𝗍𝗵𝗃, why did you even bother showing your dumb quirkless face? He then wraps his disgusting sweaty hand around my neck and uses his upper body strength to slam me against the wall. I avoid eye contact and continue to look at the ground as I lightly choke from being strangled. Help me. Since I was avoiding his gaze, he warned me by creating an explosion in his hand which burnt my neck and forced me into a coughing fit which made him release my neck, and I suddenly collapsed onto the floor gasping for air. It hurts. Disgusting, do you? He yelled as he kicked me directly in the stomach hard enough make me cough up BLD. It hurts. His pointless groupies laughed as I squirmed around on the floor trying my best not to die. When rating my attempts at suicide suffocation was within my top 10 most painful methods, number 1 being getting hit on the head over and over with a teaspoon, because man that hurt. Knowing that air is so close yet couldn't reach my lungs was the most painful thing about suffocating. Please let me die. 𝗂𝗃 prepares to kick me again until he comes to a halt as the school bell rings. You were saved by the bell, dude. He yells and turns around heading off to class. If I compared being at home to being at school, it was like comparing having my skull bashed in or being nuked, so I never really thought about which was worse, but one thing kept me from hating 𝗂𝗃. It was his walk. Whenever I saw his small-time thuggish walk, it always made me laugh. I let out a slight chuckle which I soon regretted since my breathing was still uneven. Well, the rest of the day went on the same as usual. Mostly, I wrapped bandages around my neck to hide any trace of my quirk. I got to the class half an hour late. The class collectively bullied me. I was called useless. I was abused by 𝗂𝗃. He blew up my notebook full of my suicide notes. He told me to take a swan dive off the roof, and my suicide notes became fish food. I really do wish I had jumped out the window at that moment, but had I done that, and it would have revealed my quirk. I then make my way home, and what do you know, I started being suffocated by a 𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗵𝗃 as it began to shove its gooey self down my poor dear abused throat. It hurts. While this happens, I hear some guy yell something, and then my vision becomes slurred and I black out. Well, more specifically, I died. Now let it be over. I eventually regain consciousness to find some tall, highly detailed guy slapping me across the face. It was lightly, but still it was just plain rude. Like, does this guy naturally hit dead people or what? I sit myself up against the wall and slowly begin to gain back my clear sight and focused mind. I look at the guy's face and notice the fact that he was a hero. All something. All fight. Alright. Definitely not, but I am certain that it's all something. At that moment I was not sure who the hero was and assumed he was some small-time hero. Well, I'm off, young sir. He loaded the 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗍𝗵𝗃 villian into 2 separate 2.5-liter bottles and shot off into the sky. My main thought from this experience was, what sort of hero leaves a civilian who, almost, suffocated and expects them to walk all the way home? Number 1 hero, am I right, people? I snickered to myself as I focused on standing on my own 2 feet. I take 2 steps using the wall but lean forward. I felt a strong urge to throw up. I regurgitated the remaining slime that took refuge in my system, and it splattered on the ground. At that moment I did what many dog owners usually do. I grabbed a couple leaves and covered the evidence and stepped on it to ensure it was dead. Afterwards I wiped my shoe on the grass to check and make sure none of the slime got stuck onto my shoe. I then grabbed my notebook that was knocked out of my grasp when the slime attacked me and checked the pages are not damaged. I come across a double-page spread that had a giant signature it. I thought, what a waste of pages. I dismissed the signature and made my way off to my miserable household. Don't go back. 𝗬𝗍𝗵𝗃 POV 2 months after meet all might well, life was still the exact same for me, apart from the fact that I start taking secret self-defense classes and started bodybuilding to improve my strength. I think I had at least leveled up from a twig to a log, which is saying something, although of course my father was at the level of a sumo wrestler and 𝗂𝗃 at the level of a nuke, both of which could easily destroy my weak tree body, but it was still an improvement. I was still dying on the daily, but I at least hadn't been attacked by a villian since then. Over and over and over and over. I also found out that the all guy was actually a big shot, which truly made me feel like this country was doomed. That's actually what inspired me to practice self-defense so that I could defend myself. I don't care. I had also trained myself at home on how to use a blade. I mainly practiced with my box cutter but managed to save up enough money to buy a proper blade, which I hid from my father carefully under a floorboard that sat beneath my bed. Use it to end it all. I was still being abused and tormented and still running useless errands, which was seriously boring, but at this point I stopped. Giving to 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃 POV, I'm bored. I said to myself as I lay in bed with my head dangling off of the edge, my body spread out like a starfish. I just stared at a spot beneath my cupboard from an upside-down perspective, and man, it was boring. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁, I heard 𝗧𝗫𝗃 say as he entered my room. I took a long and deep sigh and said, I'm bored. He just stared at me for a while before completely ignoring my comment and saying what he was going to say when he entered my room. The 𝗵𝘃𝗲 has offered to give us a powerful 𝗵𝗨 once it is complete, one that shall be strong enough to kill all might. He ended his sentence, and I only responded to him with a slight glance in his general direction. I just sit there until an idea appears in my mind and command 𝗧𝗫𝗃𝗁 to open up a portal. Hey 𝗧𝗫𝗃𝗁, open a portal for me, will ya? He sighs and opens a smoky purply-black portal, at which I then climb through and arrive on the other side. Someone's gonna die tonight, I think as I smile at my brilliant idea of a pastime. I start walking randomly, looking out for victims of my boredom, yet for the longest time I couldn't find anyone. Eventually I found myself at a familiar park which was once again completely deserted. I sat on a familiar bench and started up at the familiar sky, though this time it was more appealing than before. This time the sky was a swirling mix of pinks, purples, and blues plastered with small shining dots that shone brighter than before. To my slight right there was a glorious, large crescent baby blue moon that lit up the sky. I sat there for a while staring at the moon until I hear some familiar words in a familiar tone. What are you doing? That same kid sat down on the bench next to me and asked the same question that he did last time. Staring at the sky. I responded in my raspy voice. And why are you here? He asked once more while staring at the baby blue moon. I'm bored. I responded truthfully. We stare up at the moon for a bit longer until he says, isn't the color of moon just wondering? He said it in a slightly sad and empathetic tone. A perfect mix of sorrow and beauty. I glanced in his direction and saw very slight tears in his eyes. At that point I decided that, to release my boredom, this kid would be my first victim. Clearly his life is so in truth I'd be doing him a favor. I grab a hold of his arm and place down all 5 of my fingers. At that moment his coat disintegrates along with some bandages that lay beneath it. Once they were out of the way I hurriedly tightened my grip on his arm and waited for him to turn to dust. Well, why is this kid still standing? I thought as my quirk affected him in no way. Let go. He said, you're hurting my arm. There was very little desperation in his voice, likely because he had been in similar situations time and time again. He struggled for a while until he finally stops as I just sat there and stared at my hand on his wrist. There was not a single crack on his skin. I weakened my grip and he ran off, leaving behind a plastic bag containing a 6-pack of beer. Was that kid blushing? I noticed that as he ran away his face ran red. I wonder why. Out of my own personal curiosity, I left a small piece of paper in his plastic bag in case he came back for it, and left the park in search of a new victim to test out if my quirk had become faulty. I then find a passed out drunken man sat in some alleyway near some random pub and grab his arm. Within 3 seconds he turns to a pile of ash. So it's not my quirk that's faulty then, it's that kid. I desired to know why my quirk did not work on him, however I currently had no way of knowing, so I walked back to the bar with a sense of incompletion from being unable to kill the kid. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁 POV, so I went on one of my usual beer runs for my dad and passed through the park, and wouldn't you know it, I saw that same guy from before. I sat next to him again and asked the exact same questions. This time he answered more truthfully, so I'ma go ahead and class that as a win. I would say it was the first time in my life that someone had a potentially normal conversation with me, and that made me feel a sense of joy, though that was of course short-lived when, what do you know, he grabs my wrist and destroys my jumper. One of the only 3 that didn't have holes in them, so say nara to that. Please save me. After he destroys my jumper and bandages, he just stares at his hand on my arm and it sent shivers down my spine. I had just noticed, but his eyes were really pretty, I thought. They were a deep bloodshot red that illuminated in the moonlight. Due to my poor vision in the night, I could not make out any of his other features. All I could feel was his rough grasp and see his red eyes. Eventually he relaxed his hand and I became able to run. After I had got it to the edge of the park, I gasped for air and steadied my breathing before realizing I had left the beer, and my dad being the PP that he is wouldn't let me get away with that, so I obviously had to go back, potentially with my life on the line. As I walked back towards the bench, I felt myself getting flustered and excited. Why do I feel like this? I wondered. Save me. After around 3 minutes, I made my way back to the bench to find the bench empty other than my plastic bag full of beer. I'm gonna be honest and say that my heart honestly sank in that moment, but there was obviously nothing I could do about it, so I grabbed the bag and made my way home. All I could do was keep the memory of his appealing BLD red eyes in my mind. From that day, I made a note in my head and decided to buy some hand cream which I would carry around with me everywhere in case I ever met him again. Save me, Tenko. Izuku's POV, 2 months later. Life is the same boring endless cycle, and here I am repeating similar past events. I'm surrounded by what seems like 5 pro heroes if I count the tall lady attempting to hide behind a few buildings. Here I am being watched by a crowd of around 20 people, and here I am with a news camera pointing at me. They're all staring at me as I chill in the hand of a bulldozer-looking villian acting like Demon King Kong on the top of a building. I was just minding my business about to jump off the building and this guy comes along and ruins it. I mean, seriously bro, PS off and let me die. Go away. So yeah, here I am being held as a hostage as the heroes think up a plan to save me. Of course, if they approach the villian, he'll yeet me off the building. I mean, I don't give a SHT, but they don't know that I can't die, so yeah. Due to my own annoyance in this situation, I give up on waiting and knock the blade in the sole of my shoe out and catch it in my hand. I then create a deep cut in the big guy's hand. I honestly didn't expect him to act like a child, but he did and dropped me on the edge of the building. I then leaned backwards facing the villian and stuck my middle finger up. Man, I love that rush that comes from jumping off a building in spite of another person, and the breeze while falling is so refreshing. The heroes quickly act. The water hero creates a large blob of water which I slam against as I reach the floor. This wood hero reacts to the villian no longer having a hostage and begins to create a tree prison for them, but then the large lady drop kicks the villian while causing a mass amount of damage to the building. I break out in hysterical laughter from the adrenaline pumping through my veins at that moment. Man, what a rush. I enjoy every second of the experience. Soon after, the villian is restrained and taken into police custody, and I get taken to an ambulance where I was given a fully body check to look for injuries. The heroes approached me and some of them choke me out for being too careless while others praise me for my bravery. I get my notebook out to make notes about my jumping experience, and when doing so they offer to sign my notebook, so at that point I had like 6 hero signatures in my notebook, including that all guy. In all honesty, I felt like these were better examples of heroes than the all guy, cause I mean at least they made an effort to check on how I was doing. They should have let me fall. When my body was being checked by the doctors, they noticed my bloody bandages but saw no injuries beneath them. Due to this, they took some of the bandages with them and took a sample of my BLD in order to test them. If it was somebody else's BLD, they would likely blacklist me and watch my actions. And if it was my BLD, then they'd likely watch over me to reassure that my home and school life is alright. Since all the BLD is most definitely mine, they'd have quite the surprise in store for them. After that experience, I made my way back to my abusive home, being given a lift from the police. We arrive at my home and they insist they talk to my parents in order to reduce their worries and tell them what their child went through. We got to the door outside of the apartment and knocked and heard an amusing yell, "Are you back already, you F brat?" My ears are ringing. This obviously alarmed the police, though I was used to it and just let out a little snicker in response. I hate him. The fat but slammed open the door but rapidly hid his anger as he saw the police. He instantly assumed I had done something wrong and his anger started to show once again. "What did my son do?" he asked, trying to suppress his rage through gritted teeth as much possibly. "Apologies for the sudden visit, sir," said one of the officers, disguising their suspicions. We came to inform you that your son was involved in a recent villian incident and wish to inform you he is well. My deadbeat father gritted his teeth tighter as he said, "Well, couldn't my son have said that himself?" He grabbed my head and pushed me into the house, knocking me to the floor where I basically just said screw it and sat there. He began to shut the door until one of the officers put their foot in the way. "Sir, before you go I want to talk to you about a few things and ask your son why he was on the roof." My father opens the door back up and gives the officer an awkward, frustrated smile as he received a satisfied smile back. Since he basically had no choice, he reopened the door and allowed the officer to talk. "Firstly, I would like to discuss as to why your son was wearing blood-soaked bandages almost head to toe." My father gave me an aggressive glance before he answered the question. "I don't know, I didn't realize that." "Son, I hope you aren't harming yourself, I'll have to check your room later." The female officer looked at him suspiciously and then checked my expression only to see it blank and emotionless. "Don't leave me here. Next, I'd like to know if you have any knowledge of anything he is suffering from, since witness reports state he jumped off of the building without even hesitating, almost as if he expected to die." My father shot a more intense glare at me that felt like a pea shooter firing at my forehead. "No, he is a perfectly healthy teenage boy." "That's a lie. He, or anybody else for that matter, had no clue that I was suffering from an extreme case of depression that made me attempt to kill myself every day of my miserable existence. I seem both emotionally and physically numb, but it hurts. It constantly hurts, and all I do is hurt. It hurts." "Okay, last question for your son." She turned to face me. "Why were you on that building, son?" She asked it in a calm, soothing voice so as to not alarm me. "I wanted to catch a nice view of the miserable city full of miserable people." A half-truth said in a monotone voice that made the woman give me a worried look that just screamed, "You need counseling," which I honestly did, but if done by any normal person it would make me worse. Death is the best cure. She and the other officers said their goodbyes and made their way back to their car. My father slammed the door and I tried to crawl away back into my room, not having time to spare by standing up, but he quickly grabs onto my ankle and drags me to the living room. "Let go." I see my mum sat in a corner facing the wall. It was likely that she stayed there through the entire visit so as to not be hit. I kick my legs about and scream like a desperate child. "It hurts." I flail my arms about trying to get him to release me. "It hurts." When my legs are within reach, I attempt to reach for the blade that I placed back into the sole of my shoe but was too late. "It hurts." He grabs a hammer from one of the drawers and tries to slam it on my head. I struggle more intensely because I knew that even if my heart stopped he'd keep hitting me. Every time I would revive, I'm certain he would torment me. "It hurts. I'm sick of this." Izuku's 𝗵𝗃 splattered everywhere. It covered the walls, it covered the floor, it covered me, and it covered my mum. Minutes earlier I swung my arms more intensely, trying as best I could to reach for the blade, but it was no good. I was done for. "I feel so numb." My father swung down the hammer, only just missing my head as I wriggled like a worm. "Sit still, you unwanted beastie." He kept trying to hit me and I kept dodging. This went on for at least a minute until I finally reached my knife. I lunged towards my father, trying to plunge the knife into his chest, yet I miss. "No, stop." He screams at the top of his lunges, steps on my arm containing the knife, breaking the bones in my arms, and swings the hammer my way. This time I had no time to dodge and he lands a clear hit on my skull, making it crack and causing my head to bleed furiously. "Help me." I scream intensely at this new undiscovered pain and a fountain of tears pour out of my eyes. "Help me." A figure appears behind my father and all of a sudden I see blood pour out of his back. He turns around and we both see my mum stood there with a large bloody butcher's knife in her hands. Tears stream down her face as she screams, "Don't touch my son." She plunges the knife down into my father's back once more, giving him no time to react. "You bitch." He screams back at my mum as he loses mobility due to the loss of blood and collapses to the floor like a beached whale. I try my best to watch this to the end but become unable to remain conscious. "Mum, thank you." Female officer's POV. We'll call her Mary. As we get back into the car and start to drive to the station, we suddenly get a call on the radio. 1-2. 1-2, do you copy? I, being in the passenger's seat, respond to the call. Group 3 copies. I focus on the sound of the radio for a response. Return back to apartment block 3 in District 2. We have report of domestic violence coming from apartment 324 from multiple different people. I then remember that house is the one we took the boy to and urgently usher us back to the apartment. Group 3 is heading back to the location, but more officers may be required. We then make our way back to the apartment and rush out the vehicle. We dash over to the door and knock on, checking for a response. From inside we heard a small cry and attempt to open the door, finding that it was unlocked. When we get to the scene, can imagine what happened, but it was still truly a gruesome sight to behold. We see the likely abusive husband's corpse lying in the center of the room with multiple stab wounds to the back and a gash along his neck. Besides him sat a large butcher's knife absolutely soaked in the man's blood. Curled up in the corner, we see the blood-soaked mother sat there in fear, holding her son, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, in her arms. He is unconscious. When backup arrives, we take the mother into custody, though she shows no resistance at all and complied willingly. It takes a 4-man team to lift the body of the man, but they manage to put him on a stretcher and cover him with a body bag. The boy is put on a stretcher and taken into an ambulance where he will be treated at a hospital for his head wound and broken arm. Afterwards, the boy will receive some counseling and put into the foster system. His mother will be taken to prison and will most definitely receive a sentence, since she clearly stated what had occurred, unless evidence states otherwise. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗵, my head hurts. I suddenly sat up and opened my eyes, revealing I was in an ambulance. The man besides me demanded that I lie back down and complains about my injuries, though I honestly just zoned out as I tried to wrap my head around the events of what just occurred. I sat my head back against the stretcher and focused more intensely. Oh wait, I thought he's dead now. I break out in hysterical laughter, and the man besides me attempts to hold me down, assuming I was going into a fit of some sort. Ha! Can you believe it? That mother effer's actually dead now. I yelled out. I thought he was some sort of immortal cockroach. The person beside me pinned me down and strapped me to the stretcher, thinking I was going into shock. When we finally arrived at the hospital and I had finally calmed down, the doctors removed the blood-soaked bandages from my head, only to see that the wound had almost fully healed. They began to talk to each other about what it was until I confessed. It's my quirk. When I spoke up, they all stared at me in a confused state before they ran off somewhere, leaving me to just sit there. Eventually they come rushing back with some old woman telling me about how she also has a healing quirk. The woman ushers all the other doctors away and sits with me, wanting to discuss my quirk. Sorry to ask this of you, Sonny, but do you know the limits of your quirk? She said it in a kind and warming voice. It takes a while to heal and it won't let me die. I say in a slightly hysterical and psychotic tone, still affected by the joy of my father's death. What do you mean it won't let you die? She asks another annoying yet kind question. I mean what I say, it's an immortality quirk that won't let me die. Even if I chop off a limb, it grows back within a day. I'm like a fing cockroach. I stare at the floor as I say this. Joy filled my head because my father was dead, but my heart was still empty. But, okay, please wait here, Sonny. The old woman walks out and goes to talk to the doctors outside. They eventually walk away so that I have room to think to myself. Why do I feel so empty? I whisper to myself. Because I'm lonely. Then how can I remove this feeling? I need to find someone. Who? The one I have been waiting for. Where can I find them? I'll know when I meet them. I'll feel fulfilled in the place I currently feel emptiest. The old lady returns with a few other people a day later. They check that my head is completely healed and guide me out of the hospital and take me to some building which stood in a remote area surrounded by trees. You'll be staying here for around a month until we find you a place to stay, and don't worry, we took everything out of your room minus the furniture, of course. The old lady said, I don't want to be here. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗵. When we entered the building, a strange man told me to follow him into an empty room containing 2 leather chairs and a small coffee table. I sit on one of the chairs and look around me, seeing 3 gray painted walls and a mirror on the last wall, likely a one-way mirror. After a while, the same man from before enters the room and asks, Would you like a drink? In a deep and husky voice. I ask for a tea with 3 sugar and he leaves the room. Eventually, he came back in holding 2 mugs and a plate of biscuits and placed them on the coffee table that stood between the chairs. He sat down on the chair opposite me and spoke calmly so as to not provoke me in any way, assuming I was in an unstable state, which I guess I was. Now then, 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗵𝗃, could you please tell me about yourself so that we can make an effort to help you? I'll award him for his efforts and straightforward mannerisms, but whatever they intended to try, it would not work. A smirk crossed over my face as I begin to inform him about myself. Don't tell him anything. My name is 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗵𝗃, aged 15, born March 22nd. My dad abused me daily from age 4 and my mum tried to help me but just couldn't. I suffer from depression, anxiety, and a tendency to kill myself. If you check in my notebook, you'll find that it is full of suicide notes, and you will see that I have died exactly 203 times. I am collectively bullied at school and abused by a specific student, and I felt really happy when my dad died but felt sad that I wasn't the one who killed him. I almost forgot that I have a voice in my head that I hear from time to time, but it's relatively new. The man finished making his notes and then looked up at me. I'm sorry if this is a difficult subject, but could you tell me more about your quirk? Out of all that, I would personally call that one the least difficult. He doesn't care about me. It developed at around age 7 when my dad first killed me, and ever since I had tried to die but simply couldn't. That's all there really is to say about it. He quickly noted down my words and looked disappointed by how little I had to say. Oh, one more thing, he said as I was just about to take a sip of my tea. Could you possibly tell me about that voice you hear? Sure thing, I said with a large devilish smile on my face. It's been going on for the past couple of months, but until recently I could hardly hear it and forgot everything it used to say. I actually had a conversation with it yesterday. He looked at me with a worried expression before he asks, and what did you talk about? I focused on my memory of the conversation and tell him the key parts one can remember. It said there was a way to fill the emptiness in my heart by finding a certain person, and that I will know it was them when I meet the person. Oh, he said curiously, and what does your heart longing? To die, I responded, so I think that the certain person may be the only one able to kill me. And who do you think it is? He kept coming question after question, and it was getting seriously annoying, so I hurriedly responded in the hopes that he would leave me alone after this and let me drink my tea. Well, there was this one guy I met at some park who, when I approached him, made my heart feel all weird and increased my heart rate. And who was this man? He asked, desperately hoping for the man's name, at which I did not know. I'm not sure who he is. The voice may know, but I can't hear it right now. The man finished his notes and stood up. He thanked me for my time and exited through the heavy, white, metal door. He leaves me alone and finally allows me to drink my tea and think to myself. Month later, throughout the month, I have had to go through intense therapy and counseling because of their attempt to make me into a healthy teenager, although I honestly haven't changed and am still the same, probably even worse, since I was still full of joy from my father's death. Within this month they believe I have improved, so I am now allowed to freely go outside again. For some unknown reason, they decided to personally put me through self-defense classes and still allow me to improve my strength. They have analyzed my notebook and have surprisingly given it back to me. Also, somehow they have not found the multiple blades hidden within my clothing and giant teddy bear, which I own specifically with the goal of hiding my knives within it. At first this place felt like a prison, but has become more like a free range, me being the chicken that could be easily sent to slaughter at any moment. They take BLD samples from me almost daily and have made no effort to tell me why. They had first taken away all my device but gave them back a week ago. I still have no knowledge of what they are planning to do with me, but they have informed me that my mum has been sent to prison with a life sentence, but when I leave this place I will be allowed to visit her monthly. My heart still feels like a black hole, and I haven't been able to keep up my suicide streak since they're watching me like a hawk. The main method still available to me is drowning when I have a bath, but that's ranked 6 on my worst methods of dying, so I'd rather not too much. I'm bored. It's been a strange experience in this place, and all I've really been able to do is train and read manga. Well, they did also set up private lessons for me, but meh. They decided for me that I'd still be doing my entrance exam, and I'm pretty sure they're also choosing the high school I go to. They'll probably choose one where they can watch over me. Lately I've been thinking about the man at the park a lot. When creating drawings because they claim that it calms the mind, I often find myself drawing a hooded figure with beady red eyes. At this point I've drawn around 15 drawings of him and it's destroying my mind. I think I'm obsessed. I am. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲 POV, I'm bored. I said to myself while grabbing a drink from the bar to drown out my boredom. I remembered that Sensei said the nomu would be finished soon, but how would we find that annoying All Might? I took a swig at the shot glass and gulped it all down. After doing so I felt a slight burning sensation in my throat. 𝗬𝗍𝗧𝗍, I said as I leaned my head against the bar counter. I'm bored, what should do? I turned my head to face him as I watched him clean the glasses over and over for literally no reason. Just wait some more then we can go destroy All Might. His words really do start to become repetitive, not to mention that he's no help at all. I then remembered that unkillable kid. The thought of him made my hands twitch and my mind become overwhelmed with murderous intent. I then commanded 𝗬𝗍𝗧𝗍 to make a portal to the park. In response he takes a deep sigh and says, one of these days you'll be caught by a hero because of your killing sprees. He opens a swirling portal which I then slowly climb through. Once on the other side I see the dark park almost pitch black due to the dark clouds covering the illuminated moon. And then repeating all the same actions for the third time I sit on the bench, I stare at the sky for a bit and close my eyes. When I opened my eyes again I saw two bright green orbs staring down at me, complemented by a large devilish smirk. It was the kid. Izuku's POV. I finally got out of that boring building. I checked my phone beforehand to find out that it was a 45-minute walk back to the area I lived in. I made my way back to where my suffering began, using the map on my phone to guide me, leaving the building at 5:30 p.m. Although I had some resistance from the people watching over me, they eventually conceded. I soon made it to my former apartment. I looked at it reminiscing the past. It made me smile. That's where he died. I continued walking and passed Kaken's house. I stared into the windows, catching a glimpse of him as he ate with his family. I honestly didn't feel any jealousy or hate for him. I just didn't care, and hopefully I'd never have to attend the same school as him or be anywhere near him again. I hate him. I found myself walking the path that I used to walk down on my usual errands. I was doing it almost subconsciously. I arrived at the shop but didn't really know what to buy, so I just brought a simple kitchen knife in replacement of the beer. As I walked back, blade in hand, I found myself walking through the same familiar park, looking at the same familiar bench with the same familiar figure. A sudden wave of joy passed through me along with a long smirk that spread across my face. I approached the figure like an assassin nearing their target and took my place behind him, making up for my short height by propping myself up on a large rock that conveniently sat behind the bench. When he opened his eyes I could see them full of shock as he saw my face above him. For a while we looked at each other eye to eye before he scoffed and asked, "What are you doing?" He said it in his familiar raspy voice, which, at this point, made me feel a strong sense of calm. "Kill me now." Hearing him speak made the joy that reflected out of my eyes far more intense. I was going mad from excitement. I truly was obsessed. "Please end me." 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲𝗧𝗍 POV. Two beady green eyes staring directly at me. At first I felt shocked, so I asked him, "What are you doing?" After my question the kid's smile grew and it was honestly creepy. He then responded to me in a psychotic tone, different from his usual depressed monotone one. "I just wanted to see you again since you're the one my heart craves." He said it in a real straightforward and simple manner that just increased my suspicions. I had no idea what he was on about and looked at him with slight disgust. "Don't look at me like that. All you have to do is fulfill my heart's longing." My suspicions truthfully turned to curiosity. I mean, what would an unkillable kid want from me? My heart's current longing was to find a way to kill the kid, so I decided to listen to him. "And what do you want?" I asked in an uninterested way. "Simple," he said merrily. "I want to die." His words truly did shock me. Why would he come to me about such a thing? Why didn't he just find some method himself? Did he know what my goal was last time we met? I went quiet for a while, and during that time he walked around the bench and sat beside me. He leaned his head against me and relaxed on my shoulder. He left himself so defenseless. Within a few minutes of that, the moon came into view as the clouds traveled east. "Ah, look at the moon. Isn't it appealing?" The way he talked to me was like an innocent child who hadn't suffered at all, but the look in his desperate eyes spoke differently. When the moon came into view, his features became more obvious. I could see his delicate cheeks overrun with small little freckles. His eyes were wide and full of wonder as he looked at the moon, but were also the eyes of someone that had been through hell and back. He had layers of thick curls which sat at the top of his head, however the rest of his head was covered by the black hood from his deep black hoodie. His smile was one of a future killer. The way the kid was acting now honestly made me laugh, and I let out a slight chuckle. It really was funny how far the kid had fallen. I mean, wow, he had basically become a sociopath. I wouldn't have been surprised if he ended up like me in the future, but I could tell that he still hadn't fully broken and needed a slight nudge. I could easily tell he hadn't killed anyone yet, and I mean I would gladly like to assist this child in his venture to insanity, but I couldn't deny that I really did want to kill him. Okay then, I said to the kid. I'll help you die. He closed his eyes and mouth, tilted his head and gave me an innocent look as he said, "Thank you." His happiness poured out of him and caused me to look away for a moment. He pulled a blade out from his pocket, obviously because he knew nothing of my quirk, and pointed the handle towards me. He took off his hoodie and revealed his somewhat muscular arms and the rest of his bushy hair. It looked quite soft. I reached for the blade, while keeping my pinky off of it in order to not disintegrate it. I grabbed onto the kid's shoulder and straight away plunged it into his heart. He didn't scream, he didn't cry, he didn't even flinch, he just smiled at me and slowly reopened his eyes. Eventually I removed the blade from his chest and we just stared into each other's eyes for a while. After around a minute his face became full of rage as he had his own tantrum when he felt his wound heal. He started screaming like a child. Why the hell didn't 𝗳𝗃 work? It promised me, it promised me. The voice promised me that it'd fill the void within my heart, so why am I still alive? Why do I survive death once more? It really did make me laugh. Never mind me helping the kid break. This kid was already long broken. Hell, I'd say he'd already crossed the brink of insanity. From the sound of it, it seemed as though the kid had an immortality quirk, which is why my quirk didn't work on him. I understand now. All the pieces fit into place. My quirk is just fine. It's you who's the abnormal, I said joyfully as I stood up, raising my two arms in triumph. I had solved my issue, but what was the kid on about? Why was he talking about me being the one to kill him, and that it was said by a voice in his head? I was about to interrogate him, but he quickly reached for the knife, grabbed his hoodie and ran off before I had a chance to say anything. I watched as he left and then made my way back to the bar. I was certain that we would cross paths again. Izuku's POV, why? Why didn't 𝗳𝗃 work? I screamed as I ran out of the park. It really did hurt me inside that I was still alive, but it also hurt that he didn't even bother to follow or help me. Instead he just stood there and smiled. I hate life. I yelled and screamed like a spoilt little brat until I no longer had a breath left to give. After a while, I stopped under some bus shelter in order to catch my breath and regain my stamina. Why? I whimpered. At that point I fell into a silent sob and crouched down, placing my hands on my knees and burying my head into my thighs. I felt confused, angry, annoyed and sad. I felt like I was in despair. I sat there for a while, left alone with my own miserable thoughts, waiting until I could find the effort to move. At around 8 I picked up the courage to get up and make my way back to the plain and pristine building. I really wanted to just find some ditch and lie there for eternity, but for some unknown reason there was a flicker of hope within me. I didn't know why, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do about it, but that unknown and new feeling was what kept me sane. I was certain that it was that meeting with him. Even though I didn't die, my heart felt somewhat significantly less hollow. I hid the evidence of being stabbed by throwing away my shirt and zipping up my hoodie, and then entered the building, where I was greeted by the people there who asked multiple questions about my time out the building. When they finally left me be, I entered my room and fell into a slump on my bed. I took the blade out of my pocket and stared at it, thinking about how he used it. I didn't know how I knew it, but I was certain that we would meet again. I'll be waiting. Izuku's POV 1 month later. Okay, so at this point, feel like there may have been a few mistranslations on my part. I have done some research reading manga, and I feel like the voice may have been referring to the person replacing my heart's longing and then fulfilling it, so as to remove my longing to die. In many of the manga I have read, they often associate matters of the heart with romantic feelings for another, so it could be possible that my view of this was all wrong from the get-go. I muttered to myself as I sat on my bed, stroking my chin as I thought about the true context of the voice's words. Before me was a new notebook, different from the one containing my suicide notes. This notebook contained information related to the voice, the red-eyed guy, my heart's longing, and the true meaning of it all. The first couple of pages were basically diary entries that I wrote down after the last time I met him, but then I started writing down the voice's words and branched off possible meanings for them and looking for a loophole or if there were any clues on how I could die. At some point I started compiling all the information I had on the strange figure and basically made a character profile for him. Obviously I was missing a hell of a lot of information. There's also like 20 pages where it's just full of drawings of him. At first I just drew him as a silhouette with red eyes, but then I started guessing his appearance from the simple and small details I could remember. I then started thinking about what I truly wanted and made a list of it all. On the surface I just want to die, but if I were to peel off the lid, what would I see inside? Well, inside I would see my trauma, the feeling of no one being there for me, my anxiety, my depression, my helplessness, and my misery. From all that I thought about how it could have been prevented, or at least how it might have not affected me as much, and came to the conclusion that the key issue was my crippling loneliness. I'm sure that if I had someone with me I wouldn't have suffered as much, or if I cared for someone I may have wanted to live for them, so what I truly desired was for someone to care about me and help me through it all. I then focused on matters of the heart, though there was one main problem: I was not mindful of what people associated with the human heart. After all, I always just thought of it as a vital organ and nothing more. So in my pursuit of more knowledge, I consulted those who I thought would be more knowledgeable. I asked some of the people who were around the building, asking literally anybody who passed. Some said that a person's heart would feel warm when you truly cared for another. A small few said a person's heart would react when two people do the deed. And others said the heart gives out a feeling that couldn't be explained. There were also a few people who just ignored me. After finding their words completely pointless and vague, I decided to ignore all their words and consult the holy scriptures, my beloved manga. Hence, thanks to them, I came to the word love, which I had to search on Google to figure out what it meant. I then found that all the pieces fit and created a final picture that was the answer to all my hard work and effort. Clearly he is supposed to love me and I him. I yelled like a teenage girl as I flopped backwards on my bed hugging a pillow. Laughed to myself with excitement. That same old woman from a few months ago entered my room with 3 men who were double her size behind her. "Hello, dearie. I hope you're ready because it's time for you to leave this place," she said in a sweet old voice. "We found a place for you to stay along with a new high school where I'm sure you'll fit right in." After she finished speaking, the men behind her started to collect all the things in my room and pack them away, which was kinda annoying since they were touching all my stuff. The woman led me to a car parked outside and we both got into the back 2 seats. We waited as the men packed my things and brought the bags out one by one. As I sat there, I contemplated about what would happen to me. I had come to the conclusion that I would either be sent to some rich private boarding school that they could easily watch me in, a simple high school where I'd be reasonably free and they'd just check on me occasionally, or some sort of facility where they would strap me in and dissect me. If it were the latter, then I'd have to make a break for it. After all, how could I fulfill my heart's longing if I was strapped to some chopping board? I'll kill it. If it were the other options, I would comply since they're not too bad. Well, there was a chance that my assumptions were completely wrong and it's none of the above, so I'll have to wait and see. The men finished loading up the car and we began to make our way towards who knows where. There were 3 others in the car excluding me, the old woman, a buff guy probably in case I go berserk or something, and I drive who looks somewhat insignificant, clearly just there for no other reason but to drive. After 1 hour of driving, we came to an abrupt stop towards the top of some hill that was once again surrounded by trees. I was sensing a bunch of red flags. It's remote, it's surrounded by forest, and I was still being kept in the car as the old woman and the driver got out and talked to someone who was out of view since they were behind the car. The fact that the buff guy was also still in the car with me was even more of a warning, as it shows they believe I was a threat. After at least 10 minutes, the driver opened the car door and told me to come out. As I did, the buff guy also got out the car and went to go grab my things out the boot. Now that I was out the car, I could see the appealing city view of the bottom of the hill, though I got bored of it pretty quickly. The old woman waved for me to go round to the back of the car. I do as she insists and then see who they were talking to. It a cute-looking little mouse, bear thing. It looked like a school mascot. I knelt down next to the creature and kinda poked its forehead to see how it would react, though it backfired on me quickly, as once I felt its soft fur I stared to pat it on the head. Eventually it spoke, saying, "Welcome to my school, I am the principal." It spoke in a joyful high-pitched tone, and it was all too much for me. I fell backwards as I slowly began to die from the overwhelming cuteness that radiated off of this undiscovered specimen. When I finally regained my sense of self, I realized his words, stood up and stared behind me in the directing of the school. I stood witness to a giant sign that broadcasted the letters all across the area. Behind it was a peculiar H-shaped building that looked tall enough to be a 5-story flat. "My name is 𝗍𝗍, the little rat said, "and I welcome you to UA as a student of Class 1A. I don't have time for this. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲 𝗵𝗃𝗲, I said with a neutral face as I stared up to the new school that I was supposed to attend and went deep into thought. It took me a while, but I finally remembered something about this school on TV. I said as I whacked one of my hands on the palm of the other, "This is that sports festival school, isn't it?" I said smugly. The driver looked at me awkwardly as if I was a caveman trapped in the modern era. "That's right." The principal, 𝗍𝗍, said without any judgment. "This is the esteemed hero school UA know for bringing up some of the best heroes, and you're in hero course, Class 1A. For a short while I looked at the creature with a great deal of judgment as I imagined me as a hero, and it hurt my head. "Apologies, sir. I believe you may be delusional," I said to him calmly so as to not stress the messed-up creature. He just stared into my eyes as an open smile sat upon his face. I felt really confused until the old woman said, "Oh, dearie, I was telling you about it on the way here in the car." I just stood there and looked at her with an awkward smile, and silence fell upon us for a while. "I want to go to the park." It took quite a while, but the principal finally broke the ice. "How about we tell you about it again as we give you a tour around the campus?" Since I had no right to refuse, I gave him a small nod while maintaining my awkward smile. They first led me up to the H-shaped building, leaving the buff guy to take my stuff elsewhere. It was kinda weird. I mean, both the people leading me were so small that I had to take really tiny steps in order to stay behind with them. First they led me over to the 1A classroom, lecturing me about how that would be my new classroom along with 19 other students when high school starts. They then took me to the canteen, training grounds, and other key rooms, during which they tell me the general rules at UA that I will have to abide by and how the classes will work. They also take me to the medical room and tell me that if there's anything wrong physically or mentally, I should go there, as that is where the old woman will be. Finally, they took me over to a large brick building and tell me that is where I'll be staying for the next 3 years of my life along with the other students when they get here. They then led me to the top floor of the building and tell me that I'll be the only one up there so that I can have some space. They leave me in front of room 024 and tell me that they'll come back in around 2 hours in order to give me time to set up my room and settle down. I entered the room alone and saw a decently sized space with a tower of boxes in the center. At the very least, it was larger than my original bedroom in that apartment. I opened the boxes one by one, first hanging up my clothes in the wardrobe given to me. When I looked at it again, I could really tell how much I liked dark colors, and especially the color red. At the very end of the wardrobe, I noticed 3 out-of-place sets of clothing. I took them out and realized that they were the school's uniform put there in preparation of my arrival. I opened my next box, this time containing all of my bedding, so I spread them out onto the mattress that was also supplied to me, as well as a metal bed frame that the mattress sat upon. I clearly am obsessed with that mysterious guy because my bed quilt was of a hooded figure with red glowing eyes. When I found this, I was literally cheering for a week about how something like it actually existed. I finished setting up my room by painting my walls black, hanging up all my dark-colored posters, and putting a soft rug on the cold wooden floor right in the center. I had finished setting up my room with half an hour to spare, so I decided to venture around the dorm room building, searching around the place. From this small journey, I found the location of the washrooms, kitchen, main room, and found that, at the moment, every other room was empty. After a while, the principal and old woman came to get me, and we ate dinner together with a few other members of staff in the canteen. It felt really awkward to sit with these random people. After all, I was used to eating alone or not eat at all. At least I learnt during that time that the other students would be arriving at school in 1 week, so I'll be able to have some peace and quiet for a bit longer. I had decided that every day of the coming week I would go over to the park, sit on the bench and wait. Shigaraki's POV Kurojiri recently informed me that All Might is becoming a teacher for the brats at UA for a while. At first I was glad that we knew where he would be, but the security of that place is just so annoying. I kept asking Kurojiri if he could create a portal there for us, but he kept complaining about us setting off the alarms. Why do they even try so hard to protect all those snot-nosed kids? They may be the future hero that people will look out for, but they'll never get a taste of reality if they're constantly protected. We'll finally have a use for our little mole. Kurojiri informed me. Mole? I asked suspiciously. Yes, a mole to plant at UA. Do you not remember me telling you about them? I looked at him with confusion. He sighed as he said, they joined us a little while back and have been waiting for an assignment. They have amazing acting skills and can blend in with different crowds of people with ease. He really did sound like a proud parent, but I didn't really give a DMN, as long as there was some way for us to enter UA. Sensei also told us that the new Nomu is complete and is powerful enough to face All Might head-on. I can't wait to kill him, I said as I chugged down my drink. I once again sat at the bar as Kurojiri stood on the other side. These days have been so boring and repetitive that I started running out of things to do. I complained to Kurojiri. Well, we could always spend some time getting our name out there by targeting other high-rank heroes such as Endeavor. Kurojiri suggested, though I quickly dismissed the idea and waved my hand at him. I'd rather work from the top downwards. He would not change my mind. I'd rather see the people's faces when they see their symbol of peace crushed from defeat. It'll create such utterly amazing chaos. Izuku's POV on the first day of my week of freedom, I just went to that bench in the park and sat there from 3 till 8. I had a curfew of 9. On the second day of the week I was given all of my textbook and work that I would need for school, then went to go sit on the bench. Once again from 3 till on the third day I repeated my exact same actions, and on that day some kid approached me and asked me what I was doing since he saw me there yesterday as well, so I replied, I'm waiting for someone to save me. The kid looked at for a moment and then went running back to his friends. All 3 days the man did not come, and all 3 days I felt disappointed. On the fourth day I was preparing to set off and go to the park until the old woman knocked on my door and asked if I wanted to go see my mum. I obviously said yes because she is the one who literally saved me from that foul-talking pig. We drove down to a high-security prison. The old woman stayed with me for comfort or something like that, I dunno, got scanned for anything suspicious as we entered and was given a full-body search. At that very moment I was so thankful that I left all my blades in my room. When I entered a room with glass in the middle alone, I saw my mum giving me one of her signature sad smiles, and so I smiled back. Hi sweetheart, are you alright? Have they been treating you well? Are you being fed? I honestly miss this feeling. It was a feeling where I actually wanted to say, I love you mum. And mean it. My mum fell into shock. After all, I hadn't properly said that since I was around. I'm glad that he's gone. After all, we can both be happy now. As I said that to her, I placed my hand on the glass between us, and she followed. My hands were so small compared to hers, probably due to me being starved so often and being unable to grow properly. After me and my mum had a long and happy conversation about one another, which we hadn't done in years, our time ran out and I had to leave. I promised we would see each other next month, exited the prison and got in the car. After all that, I had a peaceful car ride as I put my headphones on and listened to my music. The rest of the week continued on like before. I just waited and waited and waited. However, on the 5th day the kid from before asked if I wanted to play with him and his friends, so I joined them in a game of catch. For the majority of the time he likely assumed I was around 12 because of my height. The 6th day replicated the 5th, but something annoying happened on my last peaceful day. Some of the other students had already began moving their stuff into their dorm rooms and started preparing them for the next day. Due to my antisocialness, I just hauled up in my room waiting until they left, since they couldn't actually stay here till tomorrow. After they left, I went over to the washrooms and sat in the bathtub for a while as I thought of how to avoid people the most. The best conclusion I found was to act unapproachable. So I should just be myself. The next day I changed into my uniform but found that the blazer was too annoying and uncomfortable, so I just replaced it with an oversized hoodie. I made my way over to the H-shaped building and looked for Class 1A. Since my memory was amazing, I first found myself at the granny's clinic, then the cafeteria, until I finally found myself in front of a giant door with the symbols, one on top of each other. When I opened the door, I saw no one. It was because of my superb listening skills and my close proximity to the building that I arrived 1 hour early. Since there was no point in leaving because I'd likely never come back, I looked for my seat on the chart on the board and sat one seat forward from the back left corner. I fell into a slump on the desk, used my hood to cover my face, and drifted into a quiet slumber. Ida's POV: when I arrived at the classroom half an hour early, I noticed a student with their head on their desk in the back corner of the room. I informed him of how students should be respectful to the desks that our former seniors learned on, but he completely ignored me. I motioned my hands to indicate that he should not be doing such things, but his hood obscured his view. Eventually, a cold-looking student with 2 different hair colors, half red, half white, entered the classroom and sat towards the back on the right-hand side of the room. I greeted him, but he looked the other way and stared at the wall for a while. One at a time, my new classmates started to enter the room and I greeted them all. Some greeted me back, some acted coldly, some shy, some acted excessively friendly, and this one classmate ignored my words, gave a perverse smile and approached a pink girl. She quickly kicked him in the face before anything happened and he fell to the ground, so any issues were resolved. With around 3 minutes until the bell rang, an aggressive hot-headed classmate entered yelling, "Don't any of you extras get in my way, you hear me?" He shouted it out like some common back alley thug as he made his way over to his seat in front of the sleeping student with one of the most peculiar walks I had ever seen. He sat down on his chair, leaned back onto the sleeping classmate's desk, and put his feet up on his own. I repeated what I said to the other student, but this time with more passion and emphasis on why he should stop doing that, but he just yelled back in response. I then heard my classmates react to something outside of the door, talking about how there was some sort of grub worm on the floor. I went to check and saw a tired man's face stick out of a yellow sleeping bag. He slowly unzipped it, climbed out, grabbed it in his arms and slouched as he crept towards the teacher's desk. He stood behind the desk and said, "I am your homeroom teacher." He barely gave us any time to process those words before he commanded us to get into our training suits and join him on the training ground. We started to collect our clothes and headed to the changing rooms. As I left through the door, I saw our homeroom teacher, Mr. Izawa, walk up to the sleeping student's desk. Izuku's POV: next thing I know, someone is banging on my desk, which suddenly shocked me awake and my head shot up. My breathing became heavy as I said, "Thank you. You saved me. I was having a horrible dream." Katchin was there and I looked up and saw some sleepy guy who looked super sad. I looked around me and saw that all the other students' desks were empty but had bags hung up at the side of them. Did I miss something? I asked as I pointed to the desk closest to me. He looked into my eyes, shooting lasers at me for a full minute before saying, "Grab your training gear and head on over to the training ground." I walked towards a box numbered 4 and took it out since it was the only one still there. I left the room, and as I did, the teacher took a deep and weary sigh. I realized, by time I got around a corner, that I had no clue where I was going to, so I rushed back to the teacher and asked, "2 rights, then the door to your left," he said with an immensely frustrated tone. I followed his words and found an already empty locker room. I looked for an empty locker, changed out of my uniform and put on the blue, almost skin-tight clothes and shoved my uniform into the locker. I walked out the door and made my way to the training grounds, unprepared for what awaited me, though I firstly needed to find where I was supposed to go before I could even do anything else. Izuku's POV: well, this was very eventful. When I finally made it to the training ground, the teacher decided that we would do a Quirk assessment test and that the lowest scoring student would have to leave school, which meant that my results would literally be no different from when I was a child doing it Quirkless. At the very least, if some random flying object hit me, I wouldn't die. Throughout most of the time, I just started at the floor until someone yelled, "Die!" in a very Kakin-like voice. I looked up to see none other than 𝗂𝗃 himself, and it was really a sight for sore eyes how he managed to become a hero. When he turned around to face towards the teacher, our eyes met, his full of hate and mine full of boredom. The sleepy teacher, I'll call him Sleepy Sensei for now on, then told us to get in 2 lines and run 15 meters one after another. I had to race next to 𝗂𝗃, so my arm got a bit burnt. So then one physical trial after another we were tested, and me, who was unable to strengthen myself all that much and focused more on technique, did a terrible job at everything. When the results were shown, I happened to be at the bottom, which I was good with. To say goodbye to all my classmates that I never actually spoke to, I walked around shaking everyone's hand. 𝗂𝗃 was the exception, of course. I started to walk off to go pack my things, but I suddenly got held back by some weird material. It was the teacher using his scarf to prevent from me walking off, and as he used it, his eyes shone a deep red and his hair floated upwards. It truthfully looked kinda cool. "Were you even trying?" he asked me. He was said for sure. Well, my quirk isn't really the type to be useful in these kind of things, so when I said that, I could hear 𝗂𝗃 scoff at me in the background. "Then find a way to make your quirk useful, and by the way, you're not being sent home, so get back to the classroom." As I wandered off to the changing rooms, I said, "The best way to do that is to chop off my fingers." Under my breath. That evening was truly a nightmare. It felt like I was in nursery. It was so chaotic that I couldn't even put in the effort to leave my room. All I could do was thank the principal and Granny in my head for letting me have the entire top floor to myself, although there were cases where people went exploring onto my floor, which was a real pain in the butt. I didn't leave my room until around 1 a.m. so that I could get food, but even then there was some two-faced guys sat down in the kitchen eating soba, but he wasn't too big a problem. The night was even more painful since I could occasionally hear 𝗂𝗃, who appears to be on the floor below me, yelling about something. At some point I heard the word Deku but couldn't hear the rest. Next up we had the all guy making us do some sort of battle in a building, but before that we were given our hero costumes, though I just asked for a black hoodie and simple black slacks since I couldn't care less. I also asked for blades that are able to stick out my shoes, but it seems they did not give me any. When we started the battle, I literally just walked off aimlessly and then got bombarded with explosions from 𝗂𝗃. I did honestly feel bad for 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 because she just so happened to be placed on a team with someone like me. With the effort I put into that, we obviously lost, but it didn't even matter to me. After our battle, we went into a room with multiple screens and waited for the other battles to play out. The next 2 weeks continued on like this until it was announced to us that we would be heading to somewhere called the 𝗧𝗃𝗃, and we went on a mini field trip there. It was a long and boring bus ride with everyone talking to each other while I just sat there with my wireless headphones in with my long curly hair covering my ears. I think at some point 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 spoke to me, but I wasn't sure, so I just ignored her. We finally arrived at a large dome-shaped building and walked in to find someone in an astronaut suit. I heard 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 talking about the number 13 but zoned out and looked around the inside of the 𝗧𝗃𝗃. There were 2 large domes towards the back, a water area with a boat in it, a mountainous space, and some more that I couldn't quite see. Towards the center, down a long set of stairs, there was an open space and a large fountain. I focused on the spot in front of the fountain for a while, suspecting that my vision was dying since it looked wavy and blurry, but then I saw it. A large black and purple portal appeared, and out from that portal came a bunch of weird, creepy-looking people. After a large amount of what people called villains came out of the portal, sounds like some sort of anime or manga. A man with baby blue hair and hands all over him appeared along with some bird-like beast. I heard a voice coming from the portal along 2 eyes, though didn't exactly hear its words, but the moment the handyman spoke, I didn't know how to react. "Where is he?" he said. "I went through the trouble of bringing so many friends who are so eager to meet him." As he spoke those few words, a large and hideous smile sprung across my face. I knew from that uniquely raspy voice that it was him. It was definitely him, the one who would fulfill my heart's longing. I felt truly ecstatic. He shall be mine and only mine. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃, there's no one else who could have a voice as appealing as that. But he sounded happier than before, like he was waiting for that moment. Up until now, he likely had a different reason to be waiting, but I was also waiting for a moment like that, where we would meet again. The moment that I could see and be with him again. The moment I could take him for myself. I started to let out a sudden chuckle that alarmed those around me. Some thought I was hysterical, Some thought I was going into a nervous panic, but in truth I was purely excited and full of joy and maybe a hint hysterical. Tears of joy flowed out of my eyes as I started to follow Sleepy Sensei down to where he was, but was stopped in my tracks when the mist guy appeared in front of me. I let out a low growl like a dog ready to attack but did not have the chance to as 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and a redhead jumped at him ahead of me. At that moment the mist guys surrounded a few of us students and then it went black. Next thing I knew I was on a boat in the middle of a large lake, but did not leave the 𝗧𝗃𝗧𝗏. A couple 100 meters away I could see the same large fountain that he should have been at. Without even second-guessing myself I stood on the side of the boat ready to dive but was quickly grabbed by the waist and dragged back into the boat. A frog girl appeared in front of my face as I laid on the wooden floor due to being thrown down. "What are you trying to do?" she asked, finishing with a small croak. "Didn't you notice that the water is full of villains?" I looked at her for a moment and then looked straight up at the glass dome ceiling and was able to see the clear blue sky. As heavy raindrops poured out of my eyes, the frog gave me a worried look as she asked, "Are you all right?" I then replied with a weak tone and a large sob, "I just want T to leave this dumbass boat and to see him." At the end of that I gave her a long chaotic smile and two wide and desperate teary eyes. "Is that so wrong?" She gave a slight shudder because of my twisted face and then answered me. "There's nothing wrong with that. After all, I'm sure all three of us want to get off this boat and check the others are safe." I raised my head and sat myself up against the boat. After doing so I saw a small 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗏 cowering behind her. I should kill them and find him. For the first time in forever I could actually hear the voice. "Just shut up for now." I yelled at it and the other two almost looked fearful from me suddenly snapping. "I need him." "I know that, but give me a break." I started to become more aggressive as I clasped onto my ears and closed my eyes. "Please just find him." "Shut up, shut up, shut up. I don't need you, just piss off." I started basically screaming at myself in the corner. The other two in the boat with me began backing away to the other side and the villains stared into the boat, pretty much curious about what was happening. "Why won't you just listen? It's not right. It's not, it's not, it's not. I shouldn't have a voice in my head now, get out." I yelled, I screamed, I cried out, I basically threw a tantrum that could be heard all throughout the 𝗧𝗃𝗧𝗏. When have we been ones to follow others? Don't let that counseling get to you, just go save him. I just want my sanity back. It's your fault I'm like this. It's your fault I'm broken. I began to run short of breath and was thrown into a coughing fit. "Midoriya," the frog girl said as she reached out towards me. "Don't." I yelled as I smacked her hand away from me and forced her back, due to her uncomfort. "Is it really my fault?" "Yes, it's your fault. If you hadn't spoken to me, if you had just stayed quiet, then." I started to trail off from my words. Then what? I thought about what I would have been without the voice, but the truth was, what would I have been? I didn't know. Would you have been happy, free, full of joy and wonder? Would you be loved? And no. I suppressed my rage and spoke like a child being disciplined. Or would you still be trying to die as best you could? I still want to die. I told it sternly and coldly. And how do you want to die? By his hands. And who told you about him? You did. Wait, no, I did. And what am I? You are just my subconscious, and I'm angry at you because I hate myself. And what will we do with this hate? We will direct it at ourselves and this rotten society. And what will we do now? We will claim what is ours. I finally had the resolve to decide on what I was doing, and after a while of talking back and forth with myself, I came to the conclusion that I would not let anyone else touch what was mine. I stood up and climbed onto the edge of the boat, just as I had done before, but this time I took off the blade that was strapped to the back of my leg, clutched in my hand, and dove straight into the water. Determination gleamed in my eyes as I slowly slit the throat of the first villian that came to pass. From the pool of blood that flowed up, the other villains were hesitant to move, allowing me the perfect opportunity to swim directly towards the fountain. To avoid being caught or followed, I did not go up for air once within the 4 minutes I was down there, but thanks to my quirk I managed it somehow. When I was within 5 meters of the edge of the water, I felt my leg being pulled from something down below. I checked to see what it was and saw it was some creepy shark creature chewing on my leg. The moment I saw that I, without hesitation, used the blade to slowly cut my leg off, almost getting it caught on the bone but still managed to saw through it. To a normal person that pain would have been excruciating, however I was too high off of the adrenaline to even realize what I was actually doing. Once my leg was fully off, I let the shark have his snack and swam up to shore. I dragged myself across the tiles on the side as my leg left behind a violent trail of BLD. The injury on my leg was too inconvenient and too much of a bother for me to handle, so I used my trump card that I had never bothered to use before. I accelerated the healing process. From my ability, I was able to heal my injury in under 2 seconds, but at the cost of 1/4 of my energy. Once I was able to run normally again, and I rushed over to the fountain in the center, 2 fresh blades in hand, since I didn't want to give him BLD poisoning or anything of the sort. I finally found myself in front of the fountain. In my view was an unconscious, bloodied-up sleepy sensei with him next to teacher. I literally skipped over to him joyfully, both arms stretches in front of me, both blades still in hand, and an enchanted smile on my face as I said, "Hi there, do you remember me?" As I said those words, I saw him stumble ever so slightly but held himself back from reacting. He was still unharmed and still well. Good, now we can be the only one to touch him. He's ours and only ours. Shigaraki's POV demanded, "It's that kid. So annoying. I'm so itchy." I was suddenly alarmed when the kid from before appeared in front of me and was skipping my way, just as psychotic and as broken as before, but seemed so full of joy from my arrival. How did a kid like this get into you? I thought for a moment but didn't have enough time to think of a response to my own question before the kid swung the knife in his hand at me. So annoying. How did he even get over here? I dodged as he plunged his knife at me and fell into his teacher, Eraserhead, crashing into his unconscious body. He quickly stood back up and ran at me once more, almost hitting me, but I tripped him up in time. "Tamura," 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁 said as he appeared beside me, "one of the kids have escaped and have gone to call for backup." From his word I became engulfed with rage and started furiously scratching at the skin on my neck until I bled out. I stopped and told him, "It's over, we're going home." As I said those words, the kid spun right past me with a creepy smile full of murderous intent on his face, I think. He slid right past me, did a ballerina twirl and slide tackled me to the ground, though I quickly got back up, kicked him in the gut, and he crashed into the water fountain upside down. His face filled with longing as he stared up at me. I told him, "Stay there, you annoying brat." But that just made him more exuberant. At that point I was certain of one thing: that kid had to have been a SDST, and for some reason he was obsessed specifically with me. The kid started to get up, but before he had a chance we could all hear the famed catchphrase, "I am here." Suddenly the kid and Eraserhead disappear from the scene and reappeared at the bottom of the long steps in front of the main entrance. Looks like the star guest has finally arrived. As I said that, a delighted smile grew on my face, though my father hid it. "Time for the main event," I said as I waved for the Nomu to battle All Might. And so it began, the fight between the symbol of peace and a creature strong enough to oppose him. Izuku's POV, stupid All Might, stupid heroes, stupid people always trying to save others. Can't they just leave me alone? I muttered to myself as I stood up from the place I was dropped onto. We need to go back. We do, but now All Might's in the way. That doesn't matter, after all he's more important. Once both me and the voice were both in agreement, we made our way back to the center of the 𝗧𝗃, leaving behind an almost dead sleepy sensei. Did you hear that though? The mist guy called him Tamura Shigaraki. Now we can call him by his name, or should we give him a nickname? I said to myself as I merrily skipped back to Tamura with a childlike grin. Let's call him Tamura for now, and when we get back we'll create a pet name for him. Oh, good idea, let's do it. By time I made it back to the fountain, I witnessed All Might's body holding onto the weird bird monster as it dug its claws into All Might's side. His head was sticking out of another portal that was around 2 meters from his other half. I hid in a bush that sat at least 3 meters from Tamura. At that point I heard the mist man say, "Normally I wouldn't want BLD and guts flooding the insides of my warp gates, but I'll make an exception for a hero as great as you." I looked over to the scene with All Might but turned away due to my lack of care and prepared myself to pounce at Tamura, who was stood on the side watching as All Might was slowly about to be split in two. I yelled out in a joyful, twisted, childish voice, "Hiya, 𝗵𝗃𝗲. I've come to play some more." As I ran out of the bush towards 𝗵𝗃𝗲, the mist guy appeared before me, opening a portal to some unseeable destination. Since, at that moment, I had jumped in order to grab 𝗵𝗃𝗲, I was unable to prevent myself from flying into the portal and braced myself for impact, my face full of annoyance and frustration. "Get out of my way, 𝗵𝗃𝗲 Deku!" 𝗂𝗃 yelled in his usual way as he threw himself at the mist man and reached out for a metal neck guard that he hid within the mist. The bird man was then frozen over by a layer of strong solid ice coming from someone who I was pretty sure was my classmate. The redhead who jumped up from before appeared in front of 𝗵𝗃𝗲 and swung at him, but 𝗵𝗃𝗲 smoothly dodged it. "No!" I screamed as I ran forward. "𝗵𝗃𝗲 is mine, you can't touch him." I ran up to the redhead and kicked him in the shins, though it didn't affect him in any way but instead hurt my foot. "Shut up, you 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃 Deku. Can't you see the situation here?" I gave 𝗂𝗃 a low growl as I turned around, leaned my head to the side and smiled at 𝗵𝗃𝗲. "I won't let anyone touch you." I whisper quiet enough not to be heard by any of the others. I once again swung my arm at him, blade in hand, but once again he was alert and aware. "Nomu," he said, signaling for the bird monster to climb out of the portal. The bird started to move towards me, but All Might quickly stepped in and fighting the bird brain. Once I knew I was safe from the bird and that he was being taken care of by All Might, I flipped back around to face 𝗵𝗃𝗃, staring him dead in the eye as I told him, "You know, you've got real good reflexes," I said with a slightly broken and strange voice because of my overexcitement. "So annoying," he muttered as he reached and grabbed my arm. I just stood there dully as I stared at his hand on my arm. We waited for about a minute, but nothing happened. "Is something supposed to happen?" I asked with a dull, neutral face and regular tone. "You were supposed to die," he replied truthfully. We stayed like that for a while, both confused, until a sudden gust of wind came rushing at us, forcing us to be blown away. I tried to grip onto the ground but was unable to find any handhold, so, since my body was so light and small, I was blown away and landed in the water. For a while I forgot what I was doing and just floated there like a depressed log until the voice reminded me, "Go back to 𝗵𝗃𝗲, I can't let anyone else touch him." I instantly climbed back onto the brick tile floor and crawled as low as I could towards him, who was resting against a tree to keep himself from being blown away. "There you are," I said playfully as I appeared behind the tree. The strong wind pressure massively limited his movements, so within that time I jumped to the side of him, pushed him down and stabbed him in the shoulder to keep him from moving. "Now you're mine, Tomu. I came up with it while I floated on the water. I'll never let anybody else have you." He let out a slight groan as reacted to the pain in his right shoulder. I was suddenly snapped out from my joyful haze when I caught a glimpse of a black dot flying through the air and then slamming against the glass ceiling, causing it to shatter everywhere. In that small moment where I was distracted, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 shoved me off and kicked me in the crown jewels, causing me to collapse onto the ground and let out a pained sound. He made his way back to the center, leaving me behind. After 2 minutes of recovery, I stumbled back to the center in search of 𝗵𝗃𝗃. I set my sights upon him running up to All Might, his left arm outstretched. The fact that he was about to touch All Might made me jealous, so I jumped up and prepared to dig my blades into him. Bang! In the distance I heard a gunshot fire and instinctually jumped out in front of 𝗵𝗃𝗃, taking a bullet to the side for him. I fell to the floor as I screamed for dear life, "You can't touch him, he's mine, no one else's." I sounded like a spoilt child throwing a tantrum as I steadied myself up, blood seeping through my hoodie. I turned around to face 𝗵𝗃𝗃, giving him a teary-eyed, psychotic smile. It wasn't very clear since the tears blurred my vision and the hands strapped to him were in the way, but I was sure that he was shocked by my actions. I heard heroes around me yelling about my foolish actions, but I was too distracted to hear them and focused my attention on 𝗵𝗃𝗃, who was supporting his shoulder from the stab wound I gave him. I dragged myself towards him, but he was hurriedly pushed towards a portal made by the mist man. Bang! 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 3 more shots fired in 𝗵𝗃𝗃's direction, so once more I jumped in the way, got hit by 3 bullets and fell onto the ground, giving out a loud yelp. As I looked up I saw 𝗵𝗲𝗃 walking backwards through a portal, hand on shoulder as he stared down at me in confusion. 1 second he was there and the next he was gone once more. Shigaraki's POV. What happened? At that moment in time confusion flooded over me as I questioned the sanity and identity of the teenage boy who saved me from being shot. Is he really a hero core student? I questioned as I laid on the hard wooden floor of the bar. What does he gain from saving me? Why did he call me his? Is he right in the head? Some of the answer I already knew or could guess what had occurred. My guess was that he was forced to be a hero. He gained nothing. He is obsessed with me because of what a voice said and his past traumas have screwed him up in the head. I got up off the floor and went over to the bar. I poured some liquor from a bottle onto a fresh rag, took off my shirt and pressed the rag against my wound. I let out a short hiss of pain but quickly recovered from it. If he was going to obsess over me and protect me, he could have at least let me go unharmed. I covered my arms with bandages that Kurojiiri brought over, then had a brief discussion with sensei about the next actions I would take. Izuku's POV. When the teachers came around and started rounding up the villains and checking on the wounded, the principal and some guy with a weird mask came up to me. Why the hell did you get in the way of my shots? The guy in the mask roared at me. Seriously kid, you could have been severely injured just now. Not all injuries can just instantly be fixed up by recovery girl. I sat up and started at him for a moment. My hair felt limp from being soaking wet and from the emptiness within me, so it covered one of my eyes. I stared down at my hands and muttered, he was so close. I looked up at the masked man, tears streaming out my eyes as I wailed, it's your fault. I was so close to him but then you let 𝗃𝗲 slip out of my grasp. After that I was strapped to a stretcher and screamed out as I blamed the man for what happened. Many of the teachers assumed I was suffering from heavy mental trauma from what had occurred, so they decided that I would go through more counseling and spend more agonizing hours with recovery girl in an isolated space. After around a month of counseling I was allowed to go back into class again, not that I really wanted to, and the other students made more of an effort to stay away from the twisted 𝗵𝗃 psychopath that is screwed up in the head, or so Kaken said. So for the next couple of weeks I was even more isolated and was avoided as best as they could, and in all honesty it was bliss, though only temporary bliss. At some point we were informed that we would partake in the UA Sports Festival soon and that we should prepare for it, so I prepared in the best way I could. I sat in my room with a bag of popcorn and watched a 𝗧𝗵𝗃 game. That was the sort of game I wanted to play, one where I would actually die at the end, one where my actions could be blamed on the game. After binge watched that I read the Tokyo Ghoul manga and my days literally just went on like that, until the day of the festival. The first trial was an obstacle course, so I just ghosted through it all. Literally no one noticed me, that one figure with a hoodie on in the background, not even the robots noticed my existence. After that trial I finished in the nice and comfortable position of next was some really weird horse race or something, I dunno. I wasn't really listening, so I had to join a group of at least 3 people, but had no connections with others whatsoever. At one point this tired purple-haired insomniac approached me and asked me if I wanted to join his team. I didn't like how much he looked like me, so I ignored him and walked away. Next thing I knew I was on a team with Lil Kirby, Steampunk Girl and Bird Boy. Our group finished 4th and I only suffered from a minor burn. After that we went on a break and I saw Kaken and Half and Half walk off together, only to hear the Half guy asking if Kaken was All Might's secret love child. I kinda walked out from where I was hiding, approached the Half guy and asked, "What's a secret love child?" With deadly serious eyes. He looked at me with confusion before asking, "Why are you here?" I just shrugged and responded, "I got bored and followed you two over here. I heard the mention of the word love and interrupted your conversation since I am currently in the pursuit of love and want to learn more about it." After I muttered all of that, the Half guy just went, "Oh," and walked away. Next, the students who made it through the last trial had to battle each other one-on-one until the final 2 battled to decide the overall winner. I firstly had to go against the insomniac. He tried to speak to me but I ignored him once more, swept my feet to knock him down and dragged him out the arena. Once the battle was over I said, "I don't like talking to you because you remind me of myself too much, so shut up." He nodded at me and I made my way out of the arena and went to go take a seat. My next battle was against the Half guy, who I found out was called Todoroki thanks to the introduction from the giant speakers. He immediately froze my leg though since I was still in the mood of not giving 𝗧𝗃𝗃 from my heartbreak I spun around, breaking the bones in my leg and was able to safely pull it out. I think when I did that I earned a few gasps from the crowd but was given even more when I used up some of my energy to heal my leg instantly. I soon regretted those actions afterwards though because I felt so extremely tired, my lethargy kicked in and I felt like dropping to the floor and catching some Z's. After about 2 more rounds of him freezing me and me breaking my leg I finally gave up and trudged out of arena. I was just too damn tired for that CRP that I just couldn't be bothered to continue. After that battle I walked back to shut myself in my room and passed out on my bed. The next day after I had woke up I heard on TV that 𝗂𝗵𝗃 won and 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 came second. I then stayed in bed for 2 more days straight reminiscing about the events of the 𝗧𝗃 and thinking about when I'd next see him. I miss him. 𝗧𝗃𝗃's POV I finally got over my heartbreak and started filling in my notebook adding in every little detail of Tomu that I could remember, all the way from his name to his shoes on a detailed sketch of him. The thing that hit home the most though was that I still hadn't seen his face. It had been 2 months since the incident at the 𝗧𝗃. The other student from class 1A had started to treat me less like a wild animal and more like a human and occasionally greeted me. They even started to have small conversations with me, so that was weird. During that time my obsession for Tomu had only grown and I was desperately waiting for a moment to see him again but it was killing me. I had no patience or tolerance for waiting. It was so annoying. I often had conversations with the voice about casual topics normally about Tomu and we've been getting on pretty well lately. We usually talk in our room, in the classroom, basically just anywhere. It's not like I gave a DMN about others' opinions. Our most recent conversation was about whether Tomu's hair color was natural or not and we came to the conclusion that it was most likely dyed. It was kinda sad that I was talking to myself but it just kept me sane all this time so I didn't dismiss it. What do you think Tomu's doing now? It asked as I sat in present mixed English class. I dunno, I'm sure he's just plotting new ways kill all might and destroy this world. I muttered to myself as 𝗂𝗵𝗃 gave me an aggressive stare and the student next to me rolled his eyes. I hope we see him soon. Me too. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 announced to us that we would be doing hero work studies at hero agencies that said they wanted us after the sports festival. Me, who was a ghost for the first trials and broke my legs for the other, received a total of 0 requests but I preferred it that way. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 then told us to fill out the forms and write down the hero agency that we wanted to go to, and that those who didn't receive any requests still had to go somewhere. I then decided that I would ignore this all, go back to my room and watch the new episode of my favorite anime, and so I did. The next day 𝗧𝗵𝗃 came up to me complaining about how I didn't fill it in the hero work studies form, so I played dumb but it wasn't working. I say burn the paper and go back to the room. I really want to but I know I can't avoid this. I said to myself as 𝗧𝗵𝗃 looked down at me, confused. Just choose an agency or I'll choose one for you. He told me as he rubbed his tired eyes. And stop talking to yourself. He walked away leaving behind the paper. I then chose to follow the voice's advice, and when I got outside I used my lighter to burn up the paper and went back to my room. On the day that we were all about to head over to separate agencies 𝗧𝗵𝗃 gave me a paper with information of where I was headed on it and he said, "This is the agency you're going to, you never chose so don't complain." I tiredly dragged myself over to the location, using Google Maps to guide me but since I was so great at navigating I got lost. After 2 hours of searching around the area I found myself at a hospital. It turned out that I was assigned to a healing hero due to the similarity of our quirks. At some point within my time with 𝗵𝗃𝗃 his hero name, I saw both 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 at the hospital. They had a few stab wounds and scrapes but other than Ida's arm he told me his name when I straight up called him 𝗵𝗃𝗃 they were fine. They were discharged from the hospital a day early, before the hero work studies were over and I was left behind to help other patients. Within my time there I learned a few things, how to do CPR, what to do in different medical emergencies, how a defibrillator works, and how to treat more minor injuries. When I went back to UA all my classmates were talking about their work studies and how interesting and different they were, along with what they learned. As sat on my desk facing the window and staring off into the distance one of them actually asked me what I did and I replied, "Nothing much, just dealing with injuries." Until Ida burst out listing what I had done for them in the hospital and how I helped them. At that moment I felt my class status rise from the ashes of unwanted and climb up to the level of bearable. Another week or so and Sleepy Sensei announces yet another joyful event for our class. He informed us that we'd be going on a class trip during the summer. After the announcement, the class got so riled up that they started planning things and decided that we'd go shopping together. They asked literally everybody in the class, even me, and since I had a weirdly good feeling about it, I agreed. It felt like something amazing would happen at the mall. Maybe we'll see 𝗳𝗵𝗃. I doubt that. I quietly muttered to the voice as I felt disappointed. It was the Saturday that we had all planned to go shopping, so I was choosing what to wear, though it was quite a simple choice since I just put on an oversized dark green hoodie and black trousers. I met the rest of the class in the common room minus Kaken, Todoroki and 3 others, and we made our way over to the mall. When we arrived, we split off into small groups, going our separate ways. Lil Kirby was still with me until she called me a bug and ran off, so I just stood there since I didn't have anything in mind to buy. As I stood there, I felt a familiar hand slip around my neck. It was one that I had felt on my arm before. "Hi there, fancy meeting you here," I heard familiar raspy voice say joyfully. At that moment my heart and mind felt flustered. It was really him, it was really 𝗳𝗵𝗃. I knew I'd see him. Shigaraki's POV. I decided to go on a walk and found myself at a mall. I searched around looking at what I could do or who I could kill until I set my sights upon a familiar face. He was wearing a dark green hoodie and had his usual poofy lot of hair sat at the top of his head. I really wanted to bug the kid, or at least cause him some sort of suffering, so I approached him and wrapped one of my hands around his neck. "Hi there, fancy meeting you here," I said in a friendly and joyful way. When he heard my voice, his face lit up and he joyfully called out, "𝗳𝗵𝗃, I've missed you so much. Did you miss me? We've been waiting so long." The joy in his tone seemed actually violent and dangerous to the point where I almost fell backwards. "Be quiet, kid," I commanded him. "Be silent or I'll snap your neck." His smile only grew as he replied, "Come on, 𝗳𝗵𝗃, you and I both know I can't die." His playful tone made my throat dry and my head hurt. Why was he being so difficult? "Well, by time you inform someone about me, how many do you think I'll be able to kill?" "I'd say at least 20 before I'm caught." I threatened him by putting others' lives on the line. If he was truly a hero corps student, he'd have no choice but to protect the civilians. "I don't care about them, I only care about you, 𝗳𝗵𝗃." He tried to turn around and face me, but I tightened my grip. "Now I say you come shopping with me and I won't tell anyone." It was a really frustrating feeling since he had me trapped in a corner rather than me, him. I didn't want to be caught by heroes right now, and I wanted to see where the kid was going with this, so I said, "Fine, kid." In a miserable way. I released his neck. He turned to face me and said, "By the way, my name's Izuku Midoriya, but you can call me Izuku or Aizu. Just call me whatever works for you." He sounded so annoyingly happy as he studied my face. Izuku's POV. It was him, it was him, it was him. It was really him, and he really agreed to go shopping with me. I was so full of joy that I came close to squealing with excitement but stopped myself in order to not ruin our fit. When he let go of my neck, I instantly spun around and examined his face, while telling him to call me Izuku. His baby blue hair was long and slightly covered his eyes. It was also scruffy and unkempt, but it suited him. His lips were dry and had a long scar across them. The skin around his eyes was dry and crusted, but he was still so cute. And once again I could see his appealing crimson-red eyes. He really looked adorable to the point where I almost fell to the floor, but he caught my shoulder so as to not cause a scene. I led him over to a cosmetics shop, during which I told, "You know, you're so cute and adorable. I think we were destined for each other." He only replied saying, "Whatever, kid." Though since I already told him my name, I lectured him, telling him, "I told you to call me Izuku." He stayed silent for a while but then gave me a short answer saying, "Whatever, Izuku." It made me so happy to hear my boring but name coming from 𝗳𝗵𝗃's mouth, so as a response I let out a short squeal since I couldn't contain myself, though it was only loud enough for 𝗳𝗵𝗃 to hear. When we were in the cosmetics shop, I started heading in the direction of the makeup, grabbed some eyeliner, then went over to the other side of the shop, grabbed a few more things, paid, then left, all while receiving judgment from 𝗳𝗵𝗃. After that I led us over to a cafe. I ordered a banana milkshake and 𝗳𝗵𝗃 ordered a creamed latte. We took our drinks and sat ourselves at a table in the corner that was partly covered from view. Now what? 𝗏𝗵𝗃 asked as we sat down. I took a long sip from my drink, took off my backpack that contained the stuff I just brought and put it all onto the table minus the eyeliner. I pushed it over to 𝗏𝗵𝗃 and said, "Okay, so here's some chapstick, moisturizer, hand cream, hair treatment and eyes drops. You can take it all home with you and use it but 𝗏𝗃𝗃 cut me off and asked, "Why?" With an annoyed expression, but I ignored his question and continued what I was saying. "But I want you to put some chapstick on before you kiss me." He temporarily went into a silent rage and was overflowing with shock. He clearly had no understanding of what was going on and asked, "Why?" in a shaky voice. His question made me chuckle slightly and I responded, "Well, you're gonna kiss me or else I'll tell the heroes about you and I'll stab you in the leg so that you can't run." I smiled sweetly at him as he gave me a look of disgust. "I think we were too forward." "Do you really?" "I thought we weren't forward enough." I said to myself. I redirected my attention to him and stared at him for a while. "You can kiss me wherever you want," I said, smiling. He was extremely hesitant at first, but he then reached for the chapstick, applied it to his lips and then faced my direct. "Is this your first kiss?" I asked in a teasing manner. "Shut up," he said as he leaned in and gave me a peck on the cheek. "Is that it?" I felt rather unimpressed and gave him a plain look. He shoved the things I gave him into his pockets and went back to drinking his latte as I kept staring at him. Eventually he faced my way and asked, "What?" I didn't answer him and kept staring. We stared into each other's eyes for a while until I found the perfect opportunity to strike. I planted my lips on his and felt his dry, glossed-over lips. They were rough but felt amazing. He tried to pull away, but I clung onto his collar, pressing onto his lips more aggressively, not giving him a chance to break it. He eventually stopped resisting and allowed my tongue passage into his mouth. At some point I think a waitress passed by asking if we were done with our drinks but saw us and walked away. When I finally pulled away to gasp for breath, 𝗏𝗵𝗃's face was absolutely filled to the brim with shock. When I caught my breath I said, "That is a kiss, my dear 𝗏𝗵𝗃, and my first one as well." He just stared at me, still confused about the situation. I reached over to him, gave him a hug and whispered in his ear, "And I plan for you to be my first in everything." Shigaraki's POV. What happened? 1 second I was facing the 𝗧𝗵𝗃, and the next his lips were on mine. My mind had literally turned to goo in the middle of it and I just sat there confused as hell. "I think I can see the light. Sister, I'm coming. I hope I never have to see you on the other side, 𝗧𝗵𝗃." He then pulled away gasping for breath and I returned back to the land of the living. As I stared into his eyes, I was alive but I felt like part of my soul escaped and I didn't think it'd ever come back. I had this feeling that he cut my lifespan in half within those short moments. He then leaned forward again and I braced for impact, but instead he wrapped his arms around me and whispered in my ear, "And I plan for you to be my first in everything." When he pulled away, my heart felt both empty and whole, and my face felt like it was burning. What is this feeling? Why do I feel like this? I contemplated. All I've ever felt before was anger, so what is this feeling? I'll ask Kurogyari when I get back. I turned to face the table and slammed my head down on it, closed my eyes and denied reality. "Oh, hi there, Midoriya," I heard a cheerful female voice say. "Hi, Pinky," Izuku said back in a monotone voice, different from how he spoke to me. "I told you to call me Mina." "And who's that?" she asked, likely talking to me. I kept my head down, still dizzy and confused about what had happened and what was currently happening. "Him. Oh, he's my soulmate," Izuku said bluntly. I heard the girl gasps as she yelled out about how amazing that was. "So, is he sleeping, and can I meet him properly?" There was a long pause before Izuku replied. "Yes, he is sleeping and you can't meet him." I could just imagine him saying all that with a plain expression that was unreadable in any situation. Also, he's really shy and has a habit on attempting to kill people who shock him or alarm him. He whispered the last part. "Then why are you still alive?" I thought. "Oh, okay, well anyway, remember that we're all meeting up in 30 minutes to go grab something to eat," she said as her voice slowly became quieter. "Okay, I'll remember." When the girl could no longer be heard, Izuku sat beside me again and leaned his head on me while I stayed face down on the table. Why'd you say soulmate? I don't have any relation to you at all and don't want anything to do with you. Before he could reply, the waitress before came over and asked us to leave because we were finished and there weren't enough seats for everyone. We left the cafe and he quickly answered, because I love you. What did he say? After that I assumed I had either misheard him or was hallucinating, so I ignored it and continued walking. Izuku's POV happy, 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 happy. I felt so happy. I was walking beside Tomu as we made our way to the entrance of the mall after we just shared a passionate kiss. I felt like I could die satisfied with life and at peace, though I still can't literally die. I wanna die by his hands. He tried to ask me for some questions about events related to UA and All Might, but I told him I refuse. If I tell you information, then that'd be a toxic relationship where you use me and then throw me away. I pouted after saying it like a little kid that wanted a new toy. He replied in a stern tone saying, "We're not in any sort of relationship and I have nothing to do with you." I then went on a rant about how he was wrong and listed all the ways that proved we were in a relationship, along with everything we had in common and why we were destined for each other, but I'm pretty sure he stopped listening at some point. When we got to the entrance, Tomu said, "See ya," with a paranoid look on his face. I tried to reach forward and kiss him again, but he put the palm of his hand on my forehead and kept me at arm's length. Since I was too short and my arms weren't long enough, I couldn't reach him and stood there sulking. I said goodbye to Tomu with tears flooding out my eyes and we went our separate ways. He went towards some suspicious alley and I went towards the food section in the mall in order to meet the rest of my classmates. When I arrived at the front of the food section, I could see Ida, Lil Kirby, Pervert, Non-Existent, and the Froggy. They were still waiting for the others to arrive, so I joined them in the wait and talked to the voice for a bit. I hope Tomu uses all the products we gave him. So do I mumbled with an enlightened and fresh look on my face. I have a feeling we'll see him again soon, so let's not threat too much. I could just imagine the voice pumping a tiny fist in the air at that moment. Eventually the rest arrived. We ate our meal and made our way back to UA as a group. For the next 2 days I just sat in my room doing the same thing as usual, drawing pictures of Tomu and filling in my notebook while watching anime. True bliss. Then after those 2 days it was time. I packed my bag and set off to the coach where we would then be taken on our class field trip plus 1B. I had a good feeling about this trip, just like the one I had before. Izuku's POV, I'm so turd. I yelled out as I trudged through the woods, not knowing where I was going. Get out of my way, you demon Deku. Kaken screamed as he propelled himself through the air, bombing me into the process. What are you doing, Midoriya? You need to hurry up. Todoroki said in his usual monotone voice as he passed by, leaving a trail of ice. What was I supposed to do anyway? I can commit suicide, but I can't literally suicide squad my way through this. If I were to use my quirk, I'd just temporarily black out but still be in the same spot. After running for what felt like 2 miles, my lethargy kicked in and I full-on face planted the floor. Before that I had already broke and re-healed my legs 4 times and had basically spent up all my energy. I am one with the soil and the soil is with me. I muttered as I lay there like a log. If anyone were to pass me, they'd surely assume I was dead. This is my life now. After those words I somehow drifted off to sleep. After I had awoken I found myself on a patch of grass. Not the same dry, brown dirt from before. I looked up to see my class plus 1B eating a buffet of food that was laid out on the table. Once I had gained the effort to move, I got up from the floor and looked at the food, only to find that only 1/5 of it remained. Sorry bro, we were starved after all that, but we saved you some leftovers for you. The redhead said to me as I stared at the table. I honestly didn't really care. After all, I was used to being starved by my shitty but father, so there was no real harm done. I grabbed a paper plate, filled it to the brim with different types of chicken and made my way to the room that we were staying in, walking past some kid along the way. Wait, who picked us up? The voice asked. I turned back around, walked to the table again and straight up asked, hey, so who brought me over here then? They looked around the table at each other until the redhead answer. Shuji did. Since I never really made much of an effort to remember many people's names, I obviously had no clue who Shuji was. Who's that? I asked bluntly. Oh, it's that manly bro over there at the end of the table. We made eye contact. I gave him a slight nod and headed back to the room again. The next day, 𝗵𝗃 announced that we would be doing Quirk training, so everyone separated and went off doing their own little activities, leaving me just stood there. I went up to him and asked, "What am I supposed to do?" He looked at me for a moment trying to remember what my quirk was until it finally hit him. Right? Your quirk allows you to regrow limbs and heal. He was close but not quite. Do you know the uppermost limits of your quirk? Well, obviously I knew that since I had a whole notebook of research, but I don't think he had ever actually seen it. I can't die and my wounds often take a while to heal. I think after that 𝗵𝗃 had no idea what to make me do, so he sent me over to some buff kitty cat and made me do physical training. At some point class 1B joined in with the action, and the rest of the first day went on like that until we ate and went into the public baths. I waited until everyone else got out since I felt like if I went in there I would be cheating on 𝗃𝗵𝗃. The next day we did more quirk training exercises, and to escape the cat's cruel training, I love cats, but that guy was evil. I went deeper into the woods and trained my quirk by smashing my arm with a rock and then seeing how many times I could heal it before passing out. I managed a total of 7 times before passing out. All hits were consecutive and during which I hadn't moved many other limbs, so in actual combat I can imagine that I'd manage at least 5 before passing out, at the max. After waking up I found myself in the same spot, lying on my stomach. I flipped over and was able to see the appealing twinkling stars and a luminous blue wall of flames. They reminded me of 𝗃𝗵𝗃. Wait. Wall of flames. I hurriedly sat up only to see some traveling flames, slowly nearing me. They were currently at least 10 meters away from me but still alarmed me when they came into view. What's going on? The voice asked. I don't know. I replied, slightly shocked. Why'd it have to be fire though? We're still afraid of fire. I know. I yelled, now shut up for a moment. I ran back towards the building we were staying at, stumbling in the process. As I made my way back I saw 𝗵𝗃, who let out a sigh of relief when he saw me unharmed. There you are. He took a pause for a moment before commanding me, go back to the HQ now, get yourself to safety and stay there. I listened to his words and started running back only to stop when I felt a weird feeling. It was the same one from before I met 𝗃𝗵𝗃 at the mall. I flipped back around and convinced myself, this has to do with 𝗃𝗵𝗃. I then ran back towards the blue flames and into the woods of mysteries, where all things were hidden by the black of night. I decided to make my way up to a cliff on the side of the hill so that I could get a clear view of what was happening and so that I could find 𝗃𝗵𝗃, but came into the view of some large, gross muscle guy and the kid that I saw before. The kid was cowering fear and I knew that as a hero course student I had to save him. Ugh, but did I really have time for that? I'm sure that in the time it would take me to save the kid 𝗃𝗵𝗃 would have come and gone by then. As I was about to turn around, a conveniently placed twig snapped under the weight of my foot and the muscle man quickly turned to me and flattened me like a pancake. That actually really hurt, but at least now I knew how much pancakes had to suffer. Thinking I was dead, which I definitely was, he turned back to face the kid, but before I let him flatten him, I revived and scooped the kid in my arms and tumbled down the cliff with him. The villian yelled. Now I remember you. You're one of the kids on the kill list. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃 specified that we need to kill you. I dove into a small hole in a tree with the shaking kid in my arms. The muscle villian slid down the side of the hill with a loud thud and then yelled out again. I'm gonna find ya again, kid, and when I do I'll cut you down so small that you'll never be able to survive. He stomped off, and when his footsteps could no longer be heard I ran in the opposite direction with the kid still in my arms. I'll have him know we already tried mincing ourselves. The voice said proudly for some unknown reason. Shut up, I said as I kept running without looking back. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃's POV, I decided that we needed to do something that would push All Might over the edge, and when I watched the sports festival I knew immediately what we should do. I composed 2 lists, a kill and catch list. On the catch list I specified 𝗵𝗃𝗃, the winner of the sports festival, and an aggressive one at that. On the kill list I specified 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃, but I knew no one could kill him. It was more for a bit of a laugh and payback for what he did at the mall. I sent them all off to the place that the mole informed us about and sat there waiting for them to return. I'm so bored. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃's POV. We're so nice over kid, the best thing we can do now is try to dig our graves in preparation of our deaths. I was literally screaming as I carried the kid in one of my arms like some sort of luggage. He kinda just sat there in silence. I was running full speed ahead from drum roll please. My own classmate. I actually managed to ditch the muscle man, but now I'm being chased by a goddamn shadow. A shadow. At this point I had already forgotten about my quirk and was determined to live so that Tomu could kill me later. If I'm like this, then what's the kid thinking? After 3 minutes of running, some figure crawled out of the bushes, and since I could never see well in the dark I tackled it only to find that it was that guy 𝗧𝗵𝗃 from before. We both quickly stood back up and ran from the shadow following behind us. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟𝗘. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 yelled loud enough so that I could hear him over the breaking of trees. We need to find some source of light or fire. Do you know where 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 or 𝗵𝘃𝗃 are? Why would I know that? I wasn't exactly close with anyone, so I didn't have a bloody clue. I dunno. I was asleep for like 10 hours. I'm not sure if he heard me or not, but after that the shadow swung its giant fist down at us, causing us to disperse in opposition directions, and what do you know, the bird brain decided to follow me as I dove right. Phew. I squealed as I ran full speed ahead. After passing out I never ate anything, so my energy was still really low, plus I wasted a hell of a lot to recover from my pancake state. After running for 10 more minutes and being at my limit I fell down, kid still in hand, then heard a voice. Get out of here, you demon nerd. It was 𝗂𝗃, and I had never been so happy to hear his voice before. I hurriedly got up and ran closer to him and 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 yelling for one of them to make fire or at least do something. The shadow bird then charged at the villian they were facing, defeated him, and then 𝗂𝗃 bombarded the bird until the shadow was suppressed and controllable again. We then marched on towards, I dunno where. We met 𝗧𝗵𝗃 along the way and kept walking. We ran into the Lil Kirby and the Froggy. They were with some schoolgirl and were bleeding everywhere. Massive exaggeration, but they were still bleeding. The schoolgirl slipped away and we were all back together again and decided we would back to HQ. Until, of course, something had to go wrong. 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 pointed out that 𝗂𝗃 and the birdie were gone, and then some circus villians started monologuing, giving us a great opportunity to try and go after him, but we couldn't reach him. He jumped away from tree to tree like some sort of ninja, and we created a plan to follow him. Lil Kirby would make us float, Froggy would throw us, and 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 would try to make us land somewhat safely. So we put our plan into action, and me, 𝗧𝗵𝗃, and 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 were thrown into the air. I left the kid with the other two. When we landed, those two stood on the ice and slid down it while I just straight up face planted it and got impaled. -3 points for me, so I had to waste more energy just to heal that. When we came face to face with the villian, a few more appeared besides him. The schoolgirl, a guy covered in severe burns, and another guy in a skin-tight bodysuit and black and white mask. The circus villian flashed the small little orbs at us, but 𝗧𝗵𝗃 knocked them out of his hand and caught them, but what do you know, it's not them. The circus villian took off his mask and stuck out his tongue, showing 2 orbs in his mouth, so I did what any rational person would do. I ran up to him and punched him in the gut until he coughed them out. The rest of the villains tried to reach for the orbs, but 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 caught them before they had the chance, and they were safe. I tried to rejoin the others, but before I had the chance, the Scar villian grabbed the back of my neck and dragged me through the familiar back and purple swirly portal. I gave the others an excited smile and a thumbs up before I appeared on the other side. 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃's POV: we were too late. We saved 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗃 and 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃, but were too late to save 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. After the villains had left through the portal, the two reverted back to their natural forms, both confused from what had happened. I explained how 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 saved them and we made our way back to HQ. The whole way back 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗃 stayed silent. When we were back we saw Iida and the others there. A few of us had some minor injuries, but other than that no one was seriously injured. By the time the police and fire department came, alongside some pro heroes, all of us were at the HQ, minus 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. Mr. Aizawa asked all of us if we knew where 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 was, so we went up with him and told him everything we knew, and also had to tell the police about it. I felt so frustrated and helpless. I couldn't even save or help him. I was too distracted. I needed to improve as a hero, and I needed to try and save my friend. Shigaraki's POV: as I sat at the bar counter, I heard the rest climb back through the portal. Hiya, 2 minute. They screwed up. I thought as I turned around with a face full of annoyance, and what do you know? I was right, they screwed up big time. Not only did they bring the wrong thing kid, they brought that F kid. What? I asked 𝗬𝗵𝗃. We had two of our targets but this kid got in our way. Would you rather we have brought no one and have done all this for nothing? He said spitefully. It was true that now we can at least use the kid to agitate all might and provoke him, but why this kid? With a face full of such extreme annoyance I commanded him, whatever, just throw him in the basement and tie him down. Do not give him any space to move. 𝗬𝗵𝗃 let out a long and tired sigh, then dragged the kid down a flight of stairs. Come on Tomu, surely you wanted to see me again too, after all we're destined for one another. The kid yelled out. And his mouth too. I added. 𝗬𝗵𝗃's POV so annoying. He complained at me for bring this kid, but come on, at least I brought someone right. I dragged the kid behind me on a flight of stairs but stopped for a moment when I heard him say, Come on Tomu, surely you wanted to see me again too, after all we're destined for one another. Did it mean that Shigaraki and this kid were acquainted in some way or another? When I made it to the bottom of the stairs I asked the kid, how do you and Shigaraki know each other? The smile that was already on his face grew larger as he answered. Tomu. Well, me and Tomu are soulmates after all. We're destined for one another. He said it in a dreamy voice and my first thought was, this kid is screwed up in the head. Similarly to how Shigaraki is. After I put the 𝗔𝗂𝗁 around his mouth I came up with a brilliant idea. When I walked up the stairs and out of the basement, I walked up to Shigaraki and put my hand on his shoulder. Since you know the kid so well you can take care of him, boss man. I walked away with an evil smirk as he shot daggers at me. I thought. This'll be funny. Izuku's POV. I was bored, my mouth was dry, I really wanted to see Tomu, but I was happy. Happy that I could see him again after so long, 4 days. I finally had a chance to see him again and I wouldn't waste it. Tomu Tomu Tomu. La musical notes the voice sung in my head. I wanted to sing along with it but could only produce a weird muffled sound, which was a shame. After around an hour I heard the door reopen again. Someone started walking down the steps and when they came into view I could see Tomu. I tried to yell out to him and greet him but I still just let out a muffled sound. He was carrying a plastic cup full of water, probably so that I couldn't cut my hands off or at least try, and placed it on a small table next to me. Why'd it have to be you? He muttered as he sat on the bottom step. Why'd he have to grab you of all people? You're the one who annoys me the most. After being lost in thought for a while Tomu stood up and took the 𝗔𝗂𝗁 off me. I prepared myself to yell out from overexcitement but he covered my mouth with his hand. If you shut up and behave I won't have to 𝗔𝗂𝗁 you again, understood? I nodded my head and he released my mouth. Straight away a smile formed over my face and I just stared deep into his eyes. Looks like you've been using the products I gave you. I said joyfully as his face turned a slight pink. Whatever, he mumbled. I smiled some more and then listed what was different about him. Your eyes have more of a shine to them, your skin looks smoother and hair looks more alive. You basically look less like a corpse compared to before. He turned away to face the wall and my smile extended beyond comprehension. But I'm not sure about how much your lips have changed, so there's only one way to test them. He turned around and approached me. I prepared myself to kiss him, but instead he grabbed the cup, shoved it in my mouth and caused me to choke. After I somewhat had a drink he turned around and walked away, leaving me to sit in the basement alone. I'll bring you food later. He muttered and then slammed the door behind him. The next few days went on similarly to this. He brought me food and water then left me alone. Every time he seemed so shy and nervous, I felt like I was getting closer to him. There were the occasional moments where we had short conversations but they were often more about All Might's weaknesses and stuff about UA which kinda made me jealous. There was this one time where I'm pretty sure it was the night since when was wearing PJs. He walked down to the basement drunk as hell. I could smell the alcohol radiating off of him. He came up to me, patted me on the head and said, "You're so cute, Aizu," in a slightly wobbly tone. Since I was quite tired I wasn't too sure how to respond, so I let a small smile appear on my face and replied, "You too, Tomu." At that moment I was genuinely happy and sincere. It was the first time he took actions into his own hands and the first time he had ever properly complimented me. I wish we could be together forever, Aizu. but you're a suicidal hero in training and I'm a villain, a bored genocidal one at that. He then leaned forward and gave me a gentle hug as he whispered, "I like you too," in my ears, which caused me to blush intensely. He moved away from me and stumbled back up the stairs, leaving the door open and disappeared. Shigaraki's POV. What the hell did I say to him last night? I wasn't in my right mind, but at least I didn't do anything. I thought about what my drunken self did as I sat upon my bed draped head to toe in a field of blankets, blushing like a blood-soaked blueberry. What am I supposed to do now? I began clawing at my neck, searching for answers in my mind, but they never came. Eventually I got up because I didn't want him to starve, and got him some jam toast and a plastic cup of water. As I walked down the stairs I heard Izuku say, "Well, I would be a bottom because dash." He stopped what he was saying when he saw me. I saw Izuku and 𝗬𝗲𝗍 sat together talking, which made my chest constrict and my mouth dry. "Hiya, Tong," Izuku said, full of joy and excitement. 𝗬𝗲𝗍 stood up and started walking out the room. "Go get him, man," he whispered in my ear. "What for talking about?" I walked up to Izuku, put his food onto the table and sat where 𝗬𝗲𝗍 was. WE stayed in silence for a short while until Izuku said, "You sure you're not up for that kiss I offered earlier?" The playfulness in his tone was killing me. I reached for the collar of his white shirt. We had him change clothes a while ago and leaned into him, landing my lips on his and giving him no time to react. When I pulled away he gave me a devilish smile. "Shut up, Aizu," I said as I pulled in for another kiss, this one lasting much longer. I spent a lot of that day with Izuku, just talking and kissing, until later in the evening when I was going to fetch him some food. I heard a knock on the door along with some voice saying they're the pizza guy, until they literally knocked my poor door down, creating a cloud of dust. We probably should have cleaned that more than out from the dust came the pain in the butt. Hero, All Might. After that the events were quite rapidly. The Nomu appeared, we were teleported, Sensei fought All Might and was captured, and the rest of us got away. I think during all the chaos Aizu was still sat in the basement. I gave him my number at the very least, so I hope I can see and speak to him again. I'll miss him. Izuku's POV. His lips felt quite soft this time. It meant he was using the chapstick that I gave him. I gave a soft smile as I listened to the commotion from upstairs. Maybe it's a party. No, you dumbass. It's clearly a rescue group to save me. And it's probably led by All Might. I pouted as I thought about what might be happening to Tomu. After a while some large guy covered in bright orange flames came storming down the stairs and yelled to the people above about my whereabouts. I was then taken out of the building and led to a police car where they then drove me to a safe location. They took me back to UA and was greeted by all of my worried classmates. Why were they worried about us? It doesn't concern them. I know. I said to myself as I stared at the floor while they huddled around me like waddling penguins. "Deku, are you okay?" It was Lil Kirby, but why was she calling me Deku? I guess I am really worthless, I said under my breath but with a joyful smile. I didn't give a single SHT. I don't want to be useful to Tomu, I want him to be useful to me. I want him to end my loneliness and save me. I looked back up and gave them all a cheerful smile with a hint of my psychotic self leaking out. "Can you all get the F out of my way? I'm tired and want to go to sleep." They then went dead silent and allowed me to pass through them. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 right. I let out a small snicker and went back to my room, only to write more about Tomu and draw a notebook full of pictures of him. Once again I was lucky enough to go through more counseling. Is this the 5th time? I wasn't counting. During that time I massively talked about the one I loved, asking if they would help me figure out if it was a one-sided crush or if we were dating. They were no help at all, but oh well. They determined I was healthy enough and let me stop counseling early. After my counseling was over I also had to go to an interview with the press who kept flashing me with cameras and screaming out questions, which really set me off. Firstly, I said as they all hushed down, "Shut the F up." Secondly, nothing happened to me when I was kidnapped. And finally, just piss us off and leave me the hell alone so I can live in peace. They went silent before giving me more questions, assuming that being with the villains may have changed me and made more villainous. I bowed my head down, said, "Thank you, now piss off." One more time. I walked away leaving the teachers to talk for me. Recently, whenever I saw someone, classmate or stranger, they'd often avoid eye contact with me, assuming I was some sort of delinquent or other, though it was quite peaceful. My classmate dropped my class status from its recovering state all the way down to the depths of no return burden. It turns out that 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗃, 𝗂𝗃, 𝗧𝗏, and Creation Girl went to save me, though I of course wasn't there. When they saw me back at the dorm room, I couldn't tell if they were annoyed, grateful, or what. I had tried messaging and calling the number 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏 gave me time and time again, but it hadn't gone through and went straight to voicemail, and I started feeling worried about him. I hope he is okay. I told the voice as I sat at the top of the dorm building, peering off into the distance. I hope he's still alive and kickin'. I looked down at the ground below me, thinking of jumping, but turned away and walked back to my room. I hope we can see hi again. 𝗧𝗑𝗧𝗏𝗃 POV. The long gashes along my arms sent an excruciating pain rushing throughout my body, more extreme than before. I thought I had become numb both physically and emotionally, but I was wrong. It hurt, it really hurt, and I just didn't understand. Stop it. It hurts, stop hurting us. Stop hurting yourself. Shut up. I told the voice coldly as the blade penetrated my skin once more and left a deep bloody wound. The blade lacerated my skin again and again, and I let out a sharp cry as the adrenaline rushed to my brain. Stop it. Why are you doing this? Just stop. The voice pleaded with me as I made one more cut. The wounds on my arm totaled up to 16, from my elbow all the way down to my wrist. Just shut up. I told the voice as I took deep breaths to relieve myself of the pain. Once it stopped affecting me as much, I continued, "This is nothing anyway. Remember what we were like before, 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏. Stop it. We're hurting. This worse than before, it's different. Something's wrong." I ignored the voice's desperate pleads, then laid down on my bed, but could not sleep for a while. I was too concerned about 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏. The truth was that I cut myself to distract me from everything. I used to do it a lot before 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏. It had already been a full month since I last saw him, and the stress was getting to me. It didn't help that I was also isolated from the other students and 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏, who was the only one who would look me straight in the eye. I put my arms over my face, forgetting about the wound, until I gifted myself a face full of BLD. I sat up and spoke to myself, why hasn't it healed yet? I examined my arm some more, only to find the wounds as fresh as ever. I decided to ignore it for now and check it in the morning. I wrapped it with bandages and drifted off into a deep and miserable slumber. It didn't heal. I said to myself in a dull and grumpy voice as I stared at my arm, with bags under my eyes. More specifically, it healed but not properly. Usually my quirk allows me a clean heal, leaving no marks or scars. It even heals bones and sets them in place, but this was different. This time my arm had scarred up and left behind 16 deep thick lines along my arm. I said to myself, thinking about how I was going to deal with the problem at hand. It hurts. Shut the F up, you be. I know it hurts. I covered my arm in fresh bandages and flopped back onto my bed. When I could finally be bothered to move, I graped my notebook, found a fresh page, and summed up my quirk. Notebook entry: quirk, immortality type, mutant ability, heals any wounds, broken bones, or injuries. Revives from death. Limits: cannot be controlled at specific moments, often takes a while to heal fully. Trump card: heal within 2 seconds at the cost of my energy, use around 5 times before passing out. Drawbacks: no type of drag or alcohol works on me due to them potentially being harmful, so my body processes them and treats them as though they are no more than food and water. New development: quirk is taking excessively long to heal and scars have been left behind. Recent events that may have affected quirk: met 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏, gained a wider range of emotions, haven't died in a while. 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏 used his quirk on unsuccessful. I pulled away from my notebook and thought out loud, wait. 𝗳𝗏𝗧𝗏 used his quirk on me, right? Where did he first touch me? My eyes instantly shot to my right arm that was still covered by my jacket sleeve. I cut my left arm. I slowly pushed the sleeve up my arm, waiting for what I would see. Oh, I said with an expressionless, blank look on my face. I pulled my sleeve back down and ignored that arm, focusing my attention back onto my left arm. There was nothing I could really do about it, so I put on my school uniform and headed to class. In class I was treated like a ghost, not a spooky ghost, More like those boring chic ghosts that you would see in a crappy haunted house, the type that would annoy you since it just gets in the way and wastes time and takes effort to walk around. Normally, when I would enter the classroom and see everyone fall silent when I entered, it made me laugh, but this time I was too paranoid. Not about 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃, it was about 𝗵𝗃𝗃. He still hadn't replied after so long. When I sat down for class, Sleepy Sensei announced that we would be taking our hero license exams tomorrow. Ooh, another boring but event at this busy school. The rest seemed hyped about it since we would be able to be semi-official heroes after it, but it just sounded like hard work to me. The next day the wound still hadn't healed, though the scars did let up a bit and my pale skin was starting to go back to normal. I put on my same uniform, always minus the blazer and with a hoodie, and made my way over to the bus. It was a boring ride, a boring entrance, and just overall boring. They then crammed us all into some stuffy room and expected us to wait there for a while. They then announced the event, raised the platform, and allowed us to run rampant. Most of Class 1A stuck together minus a few others, and I made my way towards a rural city area. I found a simple building with a long conference room table, climbed under it, and fell asleep while dreaming of him. When I opened my eyes, I saw some puffy-lipped girl with a weird hat. "Are you Isuzu?" she asked in an annoyingly fake tone. "Yes," I mumbled as I turned the other way. "Oh cool. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 wanted me to give you this." The moment I heard his name, I flipped around and stared at her determinedly until she gave me what she had. She handed over a simplistic blue flip phone, then happily skipped away. "I think that was the schoolgirl," I said, but quickly forgot about her the second the phone turned on. There was only one contact inputted on it, so there was only one person it could likely be. I pressed on the only contact and held it against my ear. When the beeping stopped, I said, "Hello," in anticipation. "Did you miss me?" The raspiness of the voice and the familiarity of the words. There's no doubt about it, it was 𝗵𝗃𝗃. Shigaraki's POV. I had a feeling that something wasn't right, something was missing, something about me felt empty. It was my hollow shell of a heart. It longed to be with Izuku, but at the same time I felt something else. It was a strange sense of longing, something that I had never felt about anything before. I want to end all heroes and destroy this society, but I didn't care that excessively. I just wanted to do what I want. But what? Did I now? I gave Toga specific instructions for when she entered the hero exams. I told her to find Izuku. I showed a picture that I took of him and everything, and then demanded that she give him the phone as well, since my phone was broken and I had to change numbers. At the current moment, I was waiting from a phone call from Izuku. I didn't know what exactly I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to at least talk. Anything would do as long as I could hear his voice, and there's something wrong with me, I thought as I dug my nails deep into my neck. This is stupid. I am stupid. What even are we? Are we dating? Friends with benefits? Or have I just read all the signs wrong right from the very beginning? Before I could scratch my neck to the point where a river was pouring out, the phone vibrated and I lunged towards it, desperately trying to answer. "Did you miss me?" I said in my usual voice that I assumed he'd remember, as I suppressed my extreme excitement. "𝗵𝗃𝗃," he said excitedly but also full of great sorrow. I could literally imagine the tears pouring out of his eyes right now. Izuku's POV. I was so happy to the point that I was crying tears of joy. It was really him. I felt like my heart just had a mental breakdown while my brain blew itself up. "𝗵𝗃, where have you been? Why haven't you answered? I've been so worried." I sounded like my mum. It wasn't particularly a bad thing since I still loved her, but it just seemed so out of character for me. My phone broke and we had to find a new base. He informed me simplistically, causing me to raise an eyebrow at him, although he obviously couldn't see it. "So why did you contact me now of all times?" I said as I tried to compose myself and wipe the tears out of my eyes. Did he possibly just want to see how we were doing?" I smirked as the voice said exactly what I was thinking. "I wanted to ask if you wanted to join the League of Villains and stay at our new hideout." He sounded so nervous that it was actually sweet. "How about a compromise? We book a room and the others stay at the base so that we dash." He suddenly cut me off when he changed his original idea. "Then how about you destroy UA security and I can visit you occasionally?" It was a fair idea, but the problem was that it benefited him too much. I can't do that, but I can make my room a security-free zone. He was about to answer me until the frequency was jammed and I couldn't get any signal. It had to be someone else's Quirk at work. I got out from under the table and reached for the blade strapped to the back of my thigh. Someone's gonna die tonight, I said to myself as I held the blade up to my face, accompanied by a devilish smirk. When I made it to the basement of the building, I hid behind a large support pole. I could see a group of 5 people who had made preparations in the building. Okay, I have jammed all communication and stole the electricity from this building and the 3 closest, so that should be enough to last me throughout the exam. I heard a female voice say, "We need to take her out now." I nodded my head in agreement and snuck a peek to check which one it was. It was the girl with bobbed gray hair and wearing a camouflaged outfit. Judging by how she's wearing camouflage, we can assume that her quirk likely involves being close to the target, since it helps for her to hide from the target. The voice was right, but we also needed to be in close range. I only had 2 blades on me, no firearms or anything. The other people with her were also a problem. "Hey, Yuki, do you have any visuals of anyone outside?" A shy, stuttering male asked. "No. I had set up at least 3 spies around the perimeter, but no one has passed by." They kept having conversations like this for a while until the one who was dubbed Yuki spoke. "Wait, I have visuals on a student from Shiketsu, and he's alone. He stopped on some small bridge and now he's just waiting." They decided to split up. The electric quirk girl and Yuki girl stayed behind and stayed on lookout while the other 3 left for the Shiketsu guy. Perfect. When given the chance, I jumped out from the shadows and slit the spy girl's throat. I covered her mouth and dragged her to the side. She might live, she might die, didn't really concern me what happened. The electric girl realized the other one was missing and went to search around for her. When she made her way round the corner, I plunged my already bloody blade into her neck. I'm sure the last thing she saw was my twisted smile as she gasped for air. "Whoops," I said to myself as her body went crashing down. Might have overdone that one. For the sake of it, I used the red ball provided and lit up all of the patches on each girl. The patches on me lit green and told me to head over to the waiting room, but instead I went back under the conference table and rang 𝗏𝗼 again. "Are you okay?" he asked straight away with a slightly shaky voice as he tried to compose himself. "Yeah," I said with a large sigh. "That's the first time we've killed someone." I ignored the voice's words and aimed my attention back onto 𝗏𝗼, changing my tone and trying not to sound so dreary. "So 𝗏𝗼, what do you think about my dorm room idea?" I just pushed all my negative thoughts out of my head and focused on what I cared about most. "Oh yeah, that's all right though. If any of the other students come near the room, I'll kill them." I let out a little giggle and replied, "Deal." As I made my way to the waiting rooms, I washed off the BLD on my blades and clothes and hid the phone in my pocket. When I got there, I saw most of the students in UA and heard a loud announcement from the speakers. "And that's it, all 100 students have made it through and the next round will begin shortly. Let's hurry this up, I'm so tried." He sounded so tried and depressed, kinda like Sleepy Sensei, and me at times. When the first round began, I just walked over to a cliff area, just mindlessly skipping around like a child until I heard someone scream, "Help!" I looked down to see a middle-aged woman holding a child in her arms. I slid down the bank and asked, "You good?" Her mood rapidly changed and she said, "Deduction points for you." I didn't understand since I didn't listen to the rules and looked at the child. "Oh, a concussion from a head wound. Yeah, I've had one of those and they suck." She looked at me with disappointment as I scooped the kid out of her arms and lay him on the ground. I placed him on his side and told her to leave him like that as I took the bandages out of my pocket. I put them over the kid's head wound and the cut on the woman's arm, and when the kid woke up, we walked to a medical corner that was set up. The rest of the trial went on like this, and when it was announced, I managed to get 72, which wasn't that bad though, didn't give a DMN. However, I started to be grateful when I heard that those who didn't pass would have catch-up lessons. After it all, we had a long drive back to UA and I prepared my preparations so that 𝗏𝗼 could come to my room freely. Shigaraki's POV: when we spoke on the phone for a second time, I could tell something was wrong, but what? Was it like before where he was both happy and sad to see me? He wasn't sad, he was just distraught. When I next see him, I'll ask him. As I lay in bed like a dead starfish, Thinking about 𝗧𝗬𝗃, I heard my phone vibrate but couldn't be bothered to move. I slowly pulled my phone to my head and answered the call. I knew it was 𝗧𝗬𝗃, but I was so tired from thinking of him all night without getting a wink of sleep. "Hi," I said into the phone, adding a yawn at the end. "Oh, were you thinking of me all night?" he asked in a playful tone, causing me to blush. Luckily he couldn't see me. "How did you do in the exams?" I asked, ignoring his question. "I passed," he said blandly. "Did anything happen?" I wanted answers about why he was like that on the phone, and I tried to be as discreet as possible. "No, nothing really." "Liar," I thought as I sighed, pulling the phone away from me. "Well, anyway, I've sorted the security, so can you give the phone to the portal man so that I can give him whatever info he needs to teleport ya?" His words honestly made me so excited since it meant I could literally see him again, but I held it in. "He needs the coordinates and he's called 𝗬𝗃𝗁. He let out a light chuckle, then I yelled out, still not bothering to leave my bed. "𝗬𝗃𝗁. 1 minute later he entered my room and I passed him the phone. "Hello?" he asked into the phone since I didn't tell him who it was. "Hey, Kuro, so the coordinates to my room are 324 to 656 and all the security has been shut off, so you'll be good. Oh, and tell Tomu that he has to bring popcorn and Doritos. Oh, and last thing, bring PJs. He then put the phone down and 𝗬𝗃𝗁 looked at me strangely. "So when are you going?" I threw my pillow at him, then shunned him out of my room. "Stupid 𝗧𝗬𝗃," I said to myself, blushing as I slammed my face into my one remaining pillow. Izuka's POV, I had made the entire top floor of the dorms a security-free zone. No cameras, no mics, no sensors, and there is no way to find out Tomu is here at all. The only problem was my classmates who are always busy butting into other people's drama, but I have a plan. Firstly, I have barricaded the door to the elevator, then I have put a giant poster in between the elevator and my room. Towards the start of the hallway it won't stop them but will give me time to hide Tomu. And finally, as a last precaution, I hid various weapons within the hallway and rooms, so it should be good. I sat on my bed waiting for Tomu until it hit me. "We never specified a time," I said to the voice as shock flooded my face. I grabbed my pillow and screamed into it, trying to muffle my suffering. "DMNIT. I screamed. "But surely he'll realize it and come, right?" The voice was delusional, it didn't understand. This was Tomu we were talking about. He was a more tired and bored creature than me. If he was lying in bed when we called, then there's no way he'd be bothered to move. I sat up and took a moment to breath. "I'm sure he'll come." I, of course, was also delusional since the voice was literally my subconscious, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that he'd stand me up. It was the day after and he never came. I stayed up all night sobbing into my pillow, and throughout that entire time I did not see nor hear him. He just didn't bother. "I'm sure he'll come tonight," I said as I let out another whimper. "Maybe he just didn't come 'cause today's a school day, but don't worry, today is Friday, so I'm sure he'll come later." Those types of basic time standards don't work for him. After all, he's a villian with nothing to do. I'm sure he just felt too tired. I laid back down and stayed in bed for an extra 3 hours. I arrived at class 4 hours late. I had to get ready, eat, and walk to class on top of my extra sleep, and when I entered, all their eyes instantly shot at me. "What?" I asked as I raised an eyebrow and let out an annoyed tone. They all turned back to the teacher and ignored me as I sat at my desk. "Midoriya, see me after class," said the lady in a skin-tight suit and mask. I stared out of the window and didn't pay attention to a single thing she said throughout the rest of the lesson. "Midoriya, Midoriya, Midoriya," the hero woman said as my head shot up from my desk and I saluted at her. "Yes, ma'am." I fell asleep. "Don't mock me," she said, looking down on me. I wasn't mocking her, I was just startled is all, and I was having a dream about the first ever Quirk War. "Okay, listen up. You can't just show up in the middle of class out of nowhere 4 hours late. If you were ill, you should have sent a notice, or if there's something wrong, you should report it. I've got a good idea. How about we tell her the truth and tell her about how we're depressed and want to be loved and valued by a villian?" I hushed the voice and looked back at her directly in the eyes. "No one can help me. Why can't people understand that? The counseling and therapy does not work." I still have the voice in my head. I still suffer from depression and I still have no one who gives a single SHT about me. I turned around and left the classroom, for now at least. I muttered under my breath as a smirk appeared on my face. I will make him mine. In my room I basically prepared for a satanic ritual. I had wax candles lit everywhere, a stack of anime on the floor like some sort of offering, and the fact that my room was so dark added to the creepiness. The only thing out of place was me in my soft, fluffy, long-sleeved PJ hoodie colored bright pink. I sat there cheerfully, not giving up hope as I waited for Tomu. I waited for 3 hours and it was now 11 p.m. but I was still hopeful. At around 1 a.m. a swirling portal appeared in my room and out came Tomu, who instantly pushed me against the bed and pinned me down, causing me to blush violently. Sorry I took so long, 𝗧𝗍𝗪. His personality had literally did a complete 180 from how he started. He started off shy and alarmed when I kissed him, but now he's taking initiative. I knew he'd be a top. He gave me a 𝗵𝗃𝗀𝗍𝗪 kiss as his cold hands snuck down my hoodie, causing me to shiver. He really did enjoy taking advantage of how I wouldn't disintegrate at his touch. Eventually, he let go of me and prevented himself from going any further. Before he did, he needed to know something. What are we, 𝗧𝗍𝗪? That was exactly what I had been wondering too. I don't know about it this moment, but do you want to be my boyfriend? I asked in a simple manner, as the blueberry turned into a strawberry. Only if you be mine, he said as he leaned back towards me. Shigaraki's POV, we didn't do it. He stopped me before we could go any further. When I touched his right arm covered in bandages, he winced and pushed me away, but I didn't get it. His left arm was covered in scars and he didn't mind when I touched that arm, so what's up with his right? I sat there staring at the TV screen looking like a possessed corpse until he walked into the room and sat between my legs and smiled up at me. Morning sleepyhead, did you get enough sleep? Demon you 𝗧𝗍𝗪. 𝗧𝗍𝗪, I don't get it. Why are so many people trying to kill that character? What did he do? I said, trying to change the topic in my head, though I was also actually interested in the anime. Because he has found a way to disrupt the natural order of the world and hence he should be killed. That felt like a stab wound to the throat. Is that what you believe? I asked, hoping he'd say no. I do believe that people would naturally want to kill the person who can break the natural order of the world, but that's because humans fear change since it brings something new into the equation. I, however, would rather befriend such a person since they'd cause such sweet chaos for this shitty world, and they'd be able to end my existence, surely. That's deep. I wasn't expecting such a deep and mature answer, that it fried my brain. So, is there something wrong with your I asked with minimal brain cells left. He looked at his arm, covered it with his left hand, then looked back up at me. It's fine, it doesn't really matter, don't fret about it. He's lying through his teeth again. Okay, as long as you good 𝗧𝗍𝗪. We then spent the rest of our day sat like that watching anime, until he fell asleep in my lap. It seemed as though he didn't get much sleep last night, probably paranoid about his arm or something. He was lying on me like a lap pillow, but I let him get away with it since he was so cute. After around 3 hours into his sleep, I checked if he was still asleep, then directed my attention towards his arm. I wanted to check, not because I was curious but that I was worried about him as his boyfriend. I began unwinding the bandages and averted my eyes until they were fully off. What I saw after that shocked me to my core. I gasped as I stared directly at his arm covered in cracks and slowly crumbling. I had used my quirk and witnessed me using my quirk enough times that I knew that it was undoubtedly caused by me. This is my fault. At this point tears were forcing themselves out of my eyes and I wept, letting out a violent scream of curses that shocked 𝗧𝗍𝗪 awake. He raised his right arm to rub his eyes as he asked, Tomu, are you okay? He then saw the bandages unraveled from his arm and his face filled with shock. He looked up at my watery eyes and began to cry too. He wasn't angry that I saw his arm. I knew that the only reason he hid it from me is because I'd blame myself, and he was correct. Don't worry about it, it's not your fault. 𝗧𝗍𝗪 sobbed as he gave me a miserable smile and sat up so that he could reach my face. He swung his arms around my neck and I just sat there like a puppet cut from its strings. It's fine, Tomu. After all, I'll come back anyway. Don't forget that my quirk is immortality. I gave him a fake and forced smile as I hugged him back. How does he know that? He can't guarantee it. My thoughts clouded my head and I squeezed him tighter. "It's fine, I won't leave you." He started rubbing my back to help me cool down. We stayed like that for a while, both crying our eyes out until we heard noises from out at the hallway. "Hey, it's clearly been blocked off, maybe we shouldn't be here." An annoyingly high-pitched feminine voice squeaked. I know it's rude, but I heard screaming and I refuse to not help a bro when they're in trouble. I fell into a quiet rage as I heard them try to tear down the barcade. We just had an emotional moment, but now they're gonna ruin it. I let go of Izu and stormed off towards the door, but then Izu wrapped his arms around my waist from behind once more. He slipped my phone out of my pocket, and then the next thing I knew, one of Kurogiri's portals appeared behind us. "I'll deal with this, I don't want to trouble you." He gave me a desperately sad smile as he grabbed my hand and guided me to the portal. I smiled back at him and patted him on the head. "I'm just worried, Izu. What if when I come back you're gone?" He tried his best to give me a reassuring smile but failed. "Don't worry, Tomu. Just remember to keep using your chapstick and moisturizer, and see me later, okay?" I gave him a small nod, then made my way through the portal, releasing his hand. "Please live, Izuku. If you die, I'll be shattered." Izuku's POV. I suddenly opened my door in a fit of rage, and the moment I saw the redhead I kicked he directly in the gut and he toppled backwards. Before they had a moment to react, I started yelling at them, "Can't you people just F off? Why do you nosy cants find so much satisfaction from barging into my F life?" Out of extreme frustration, I ran up to Kaminari and drop-kicked him. I then made my way to Todoroki, who gave me an empathetic look. From the way he looked at me, the flame in my heart burnt out, leaving only the dried-up ashes. All I had the effort to do was bang my fists against his chest, causing no damage whatsoever. I dropped to the floor in a crying pit of despair until an idea came into my head. Pain can distract me from my emotional suffering. I wobbled up and used the wall to help me get to my room, the others following behind me. "Pieces OFF." I screamed at them as I slammed my door. I started cutting and cutting and cutting, and it hurt and kept hurting, but it was better than anything else. Stop ignoring reality. We hurt Tomu and you know it. Tomura needs us, we need him. We have to be with him before it's too late. I put my music on full blast to drown out the voice. Clearly one of the students were worried because soon a herd of teachers came in, busting down my door and saw me slitting my wrists while my eyes were puffy and red. I said when they came in. Izuku's POV. They just kept asking me and demanding that I answer why I was so miserable to the point of cutting myself, but I refused to answer. They then insisted that I have a full body check, and they found the cracks on my arm. I was slowly crumbling and turning to dust. I kept wondering if I could even revive from that state. I did revive from decapitation, but it took so long to regrow my body. They tried to figure out what was wrong with me and were unsure until Sleepy Sensei mentioned the quirk of the leader of the LOV Tomu, and they thought that it had happened during the time I was kidnapped or something. They also looked at how my wounds took so long to heal, and I became a temporary lab rat as they watched my arm like hawks watching their prey for 3 days straight. When my cuts had all scarred up, I was given some freedom, but they searched my entire room and stole everything dangerous and set up an excessive amount of security, clearly an invasion of privacy. After 2 months of this and more F therapy, I was given permission to join a hero agency. I really didn't want to and just wanted to wallow in pity, but I didn't have a choice, and they signed me up to the Night Eye agency and was paired up with some guy who only had pupils and no white in his eyes. One day when we were on patrol, we approached a bird-masked man and a young girl who looked absolutely miserable, so I punched him round the face and ran off with the child. "Take that, you abusive mother effer!" I yelled violently, leaving Pupil Face to deal with him. We then had an operation to invade the Yakuza and deal with the Birdman and his goons, which we did a rather smooth job of, and the kids stayed locked in a safe house the whole time. After the operation, we suffered from a few injuries on our side and a lot of injuries for them. Also, Pupil Face lost his quirk to some bullet. I wonder if something like that would have worked on me. Oh, I nearly forgot, but Night Eye died. I later heard a report that my sweet Tomo had disintegrated the Birdman's arms so he couldn't use his quirk. He's such a great boyfriend. We've still been messaging each other, but we haven't been able to see each other since I was being watched so intensely, and he's still so worried about me and what was happening to my arm, and I told him that it hadn't grown at all. That was a lie. Now the cracks have spread all the way up to my arm, over to my shoulder and down my chest, reaching my belly button. At the moment they were only light cracks, but only time could tell if they would get any worse. It was now the cultural festival. My class were preparing to do some sort of concert while I was just sat in the corner with a blank face and steady appearance. The only time my unstable self was asked to do something was when they needed rope from a shop. So I had to go with an army of ectoplasms, and we encountered a small-time online villian, who was quickly captured. We then spent our time enjoying the cultural festival. Well, not me, of course. I was kept in the staff room like a pet dog for being too unstable. I'm sure all my classmates had a blast and loved their time there as they participated in the other activities. Then there was me sat on a chair, drinking tea, with the principal opposite me giving me lectures. Pupil face also went around with the child we saved, and I'm certain that they both loved it, while there's me, falling asleep on the chair out of extreme boredom. When the day ended, I was guided back to my room and sat there texting 𝗏𝗼. The next thing I knew, I drifted off to sleep in the middle of a call with him. The next few days were just the same usual boring lessons, with the same usual boring routine until we had our winter break and got to either go home or stay at the dorms. During that break, almost everybody except me went home, and I could actually walk around freely and do as I so pleased, which was pretty cool, but I still couldn't see 𝗏𝗼 again. When I messaged him, I informed him of the events at UA, not even thinking about any consequences, and we basically planned his next appearance together. It would be during a training session, and on the day of that session I'll tell him about it and shut down security as best I could. At some point, all the Class 1A students returned to the dorms and had a party. I just stayed in my room and listened to "Wish You Were Gay" on loop. I noticed that, at some point, someone was in front of my door and went to check and saw a plate of food at my door with a note on it, "Merry Christmas." It read. I raised my eyebrow, threw the note away and enjoyed the food. What's Christmas? I questioned myself. When we started back at school on the New Year, it was a cold, frosty day, and we had to get into our hero costumes. Those who had reasonably exposed costumes had to update them so that they were non-frostbite friendly, while others were fine as is. It was announced that we were going to be having battles. 1A vs 1B, and the purple insomniac was also a part of it. I recorded what we were about to do, and all the instructions the teacher gave, and sent it to 𝗏𝗼, along with the coordinates. At that point, the cracks had reached down to my legs and other arm, and the fingers on my right hand started crumbling. They weren't growing back. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲 POV. The first match was between teams A2 and B3. The Insomnia joined the 1A team this time. The group narrowly won thanks to the efforts of the Insomniac, and without him would have surely lost. Next up was Group A1 versus Group B2. From Class B's group, I distinctly remembered there being Mushroom and Onomatopoeia. They were weird. After that match, our class lost. Next was the group Todoroki was in vs Group B4. They managed to get a draw. Then it was Kaken's turn and they won. Finally, I had to take part in a match, and before I did, I received a message from 𝗏𝗼, and it said, "Be prepared, we're coming in 5, and when we do, I'm taking you back with me." His declaration made my face blush a gentle pink and heart flutter, but I quickly covered it up so that no one would notice. But I think Sleepy Sensei did, because he gave me a suspicious look, then turned away. When I walked over to our starting position, I checked the time on my phone and saw that there were only 2 minutes left. In my team I had Pinky, Ball, and Lil Kirby, though it didn't matter since the match would never take place. As the alarm rang out, there was a sudden explosion in the vicinity of where the other students were. I climbed up the poles and pipes, as did the people on my team, and we saw 𝗏𝗼 stood at the top of a tower. A sweetly chaotic smile appeared on my face, and I started jumping pole to pole, trying to reach him. Clearly the others in my team assumed I either wanted to kill him or I was traumatized because they tried to stop me. I just yelled, "F off already," and when given the chance I broke away from them and kept going to 𝗏𝗼. We then stared at each other. I was only 1 meter away from him on a separate pipe. He stretched out his hand offering to help me up to him, and I reached out mine in order to take it. Before I had the chance, Sleepy Sensei jumped up to 𝗏𝗼 and tried to use his capture scarf. 𝗏𝗼 smoothly dodged it, and I heard him say, "So annoying," in an agitated voice. 𝗏𝗼 and Sleepy Sensei moved out of view as they jumped down and had a sort of showdown. I tried to climb down and find them, but instead I fell on the floor, hit my head, and passed out. While I was unconscious, I heard yelling, screaming, and crying. It was perfect and utter chaos. At that point our past conversation came into my head. 𝗬𝗧𝗏, I don't get it. Why are so many people trying to kill that character? What did he do? I remembered 𝗬𝗏 asking me that when he came to my room, because he has found a way to disrupt the natural order of the world and hence he should be killed. Yeah, that was what I said, wasn't it? Is that what you believe? I could tell that 𝗬𝗏 was thinking of what I believed about him when he asked that. I do believe that people would naturally want to kill the person who can break the natural order of the world, but that's because humans fear change since it brings something new into the equation. I, however, would rather befriend such a person since they'd cause such sweet chaos for this shitty world, and they'd be able to end my existence, surely. Look at that, it seems like what I said actually happened, though with a few extra steps. I was dating 𝗬𝗏, he created a collage of chaos, and he was the one who was going to end me. Isn't that ironic? I told myself when I woke up and covered my face with my arms. I broke out in hysterical laughter, until I finally stopped and sat up. I tried to stand, but when I did I fell back down and looked at my legs. My left leg was gone. All that remained was a pile of black ash. What an anticlimactic ending. My mouth formed a small quivering smile as I lay back down on the ground. Goodbye, cruel world, I said as I closed my eyes. Do you know why I exist? Izuku's POV, why you exist? I asked the voice. You exist because I'm fed up in the head and I'm mentally unstable. I mean, it is true. I was created due to those reasons but exist for another. This was 𝗵𝗃 insane. Why was my subconscious talking about why it existed? I mean, I do question why I exist, but I already know the answer. My parents just had unprotected SEC is all and created a miserable mistake. I exist to help you die. You subconsciously chose it and unconsciously made me, and I found you a solution. It was true that the voice was what guided me, but that was all. It still was limited to me own knowledge and intelligence, right? You are going to die. What will you do now? I let out a diabolical laugh and tainted smile as I yelled out, So I am really gonna die. I kept laughing until I calmed myself and broke down into a desperate cry. But why am I sad? I questioned myself as I tried to wipe the tears from my eyes, though it was futile since more just poured out. Will you just stay there? I want to die, but I want to be with 𝗬𝗏. I made my final decision and flipped onto my stomach so that I could push myself with my remaining leg and used my arms to assist it as I dragged myself forward. 𝗵𝗃. I screamed out as I searched for him, however my vision was polluted by the tears that wouldn't stop flowing. 𝗬𝗏. I violently coughed due to my lack of water and extreme thirst, spitting up blood in the process. I couldn't yell as much, but I kept screaming his name until I saw a figure jump out from behind a large silver barrel. It was 𝗬𝗏. When he saw me, he stared for a moment and became ghost pale as the color flushed out of his. Water started streaming out of his eyes. He ran up to me and collapsed at my side, clutching onto my hand. 𝗬𝗏, I said in a dried and thirsty voice. No. Izuku. He said in his raspy voice, excessively croaky from the despair that filled his mind. Please. 𝗬𝗏, please just hold me, let me be with you. He scooped me up and sat there with me slightly on his lap as he squeezed me tightly. No, please 𝗬𝗧𝗏. I need you, I can't live without you, I can't do that. His words were full of desperation and suffering, but there was nothing I could do about it. Look at me, I said, and he moved his head up to see my smiling face. For once it was a genuinely happy smile, and he knew that. He tried to smile back at me but failed miserably and gave me an even more desperate look of despair. At that point, in the corner of my eye I saw 𝗵𝗃 running up to 𝗬𝗏 but stopped when he saw him crying as he held me in his arms. He looked possessed by shock, then ran off, probably to get other teachers. I love you, I said through my tears. I love you. I placed my forehead on his and felt my other leg crumble away. I raised my hand and placed it gently on his cheek. I love you. My hands started disintegrating. 𝗃𝗀𝗁. 1 second I was there and the next all I could see was darkness. Shigaraki's POV. Final POV. As I held him in my arms I saw a trail of dark-colored ash falling off of him and squeezed him more tightly. I could hardly stand it, but throughout it all I looked him in the eyes to be there with him and support him. He looked truly happy. Well, he did get his wish at least, and from the very start he was right. I really was the one who was supposed to end him. One moment he was there telling me he loves me, and then I heard my name, 𝗃𝗀𝗁. How did he? The next thing I knew he was gone and my arms felt empty as they just hovered there. I dropped fully to the floor and banged my fist against the ground aggressively to the point where my hands started bleeding. The tears wouldn't stop and my screams couldn't be hushed. A world without him shouldn't exist. I can't live without him. Me and this world, we should all just decay. So this is death. It's a lot quieter than I would have expected. Is this the afterlife or some form of life after death? I can't see a thing, it's just a dark blank screen of endless black. I wonder if I'll just end up hovering out here for the rest of eternity, though I wouldn't hate it if I did. It's so peaceful, my mind is so clear that I can't even hear the voice anymore. I wish I had died sooner. What was my reason for staying alive again? I can't remember. I just wanna sleep. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗧𝗑. I don't remember whose voice that was. I feel like it was someone dear to me. Maybe they're the reason I lived for too long. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗁, wait for me. Such a hoarse voice yet so soothing. I wouldn't mind if this voice stayed with me forever. It'd at least keep me company for the time being. Open your eyes. But my eyes are open and there's nothing to see other than darkness, and anyway the dark is quite nice. Please don't make me move. Just open them, please. As opened my unknowingly tightly closed eyes, I was met with a happily crying face gently embracing me in his arms, still surrounded by darkness but with a light shining around only him. So I am dead after all. No, we both are, both me and 𝗃𝗵𝗃𝗀 together. I wonder why he's dead. No, it doesn't matter anymore, 𝗧𝗂𝗃. His eyes rained teardrops that were worth diamonds to me, and just like him so did I, 𝗃𝗵𝗃. There we were, both crying like mad men in the afterlife together. I'm so happy I died.